Good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board and valued community representatives, I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chair, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration, expertise, and collaboration. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we're residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that the voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibility entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Tuesday, January 20th, 2026 Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. Thank you. With us this evening, myself, Matt Provenzel, the chair of the board. With us, our vice chair, Joyce Leary-Clark, and planning board members Jeff Bruchel, Catherine Palini, and Jim Moyer to my right. Our staff members with us this evening are our city planner, Charles Tettleman, along with Lisa Harmon, our planning compliance manager. And with us, we also have our Ward 7 City Council liaison, Nathan Johnson. Our first item on our agenda this evening is our review of our meeting minutes. We have a few here, one from December 16th, January 6th, and January 13th. Board members, any questions, concerns, or edits on any of those?
Mr. Chair, I'd just comment that I wasn't present for the January 13th meeting.
So, Mr. Chair, with that, I would suggest we break them up in approvals, and I would move that we approve the January 13th, 2026 meeting minutes as drafted.
Second.
Motion made by Jeff and seconded Jim for the January 13th minutes to accept those as drafted. Any additional discussion on that motion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
I'll abstain.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0 with one abstention.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we accept the January 6th, 2026 meeting minutes as drafted.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on accepting the minutes for January 6th as presented? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chair, I had a question on the December 16th, but I found it later that the absences were listed much further down in the minutes, so I am fine with the way they were drafted. So I would move that we adopt the December 16th, 2025 meeting minutes as drafted.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to accept the minutes as drafted? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. All right, our next item on our agenda this evening is item 4. This is our planning board public hearing guidelines. This is a document developed by the board and city staff outlining the procedure in place for our public hearings held. This explains the purpose of the public hearings, the outlined procedure of reviewing an application, public comment presentation, and meeting duration. This is posted at the back or the rear of the auditorium as well as online. If anyone has any questions about that document, please let us know and we'll do our best to answer those. Our next item on our agenda, item 5, this is our planning board public comment period. This is where we open the public comment period to hear from members of the public. This comment period is limited to a total of 15 minutes to items not under planning board review. The planning board appreciates public comments and knows that the public comment about matters before us can help the board understand neighborhood concerns, review an application, or help address an outstanding item. Those wishing to make statements about an application under planning board's review are asked to provide those statements during the applicable public hearing period. Comments during this period are limited to 3 minutes. If there are multiple members of the public looking to speak, we may reduce the 3-minute period per person to accommodate all speakers. If anyone is with us this evening that would like to speak, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address those accordingly.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Greg Polk, 10 Minetta Drive, Saco. This is not on the agenda tonight, this topic that I want to talk about. And basically, what has come up with, I've been in front of the planning board, I believe in October, and also November meetings, talking about the 189 development. You can either call it Waterfalls Drive development, you can call it Park North development, you can call it Cascade Falls development. Anyways, that development has not been applied for final approval. As I talked about in October and November, was about stormwater ponds and plowing of roads that the applicant or the developer has had us do prior to our acceptance in our phase of the development. We are now in our phase, we're on public Saco roads. He's telling us that our HOA, Homeowners Association, is responsible for the new lower development of plowing of roads before the city accepts those lower roads. So this is something new that has come up. A couple of neighbors of mine have been doing some investigation into the city codes. And I just want to talk about Code 188-910. Applicant's responsibility for basic services. The applicant shall be responsible for providing the following basic service until street acceptance. And A is snow plowing of all ways. So I came in front of you tonight to give you a heads up that we have found a city code that should overrule the developer's HOA requirements. And we're hoping that when this comes up in prior meetings, or future meetings, I should say, that you will have a consideration for us being on public roads, taxpayers' and residents of the city of Saco. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right, we will move to our next item on our agenda. This is item 6. This is our planning applications for review and our public hearings this evening. Our first item within this agenda is item 6A. This is 986 Portland Road, map 63, lot 3-1, and this is presented by Cloverleaf Development LLC. And this evening, we have an application of completeness review, and this says preliminary subdivision and site plan review for a 3-lot subdivision and a 320-foot private way in the Portland Road zoning district. Board members, any conflicts or disclosures before we begin this item? I want to make note for Charles and Lisa, or for everyone. I have a project with the applicant before us. I believe applicant's here on a colleague's behalf this evening. I have a project with Michael in another town with a different client, but just letting everyone know. If anyone feels I shouldn't participate, please let me know.
I think that's fine. And I believe my mother is a butter, or fairly close proximity. It's embarrassing that I don't actually know if she's in a butter. But I know we discussed this at the prior approval of the front lots, and the developer agreed to put a fence along the property lines.
Thank you, Joyce.
Mr. Chair, I've seen no problem with either Joyce or your participation if the applicant doesn't.
Any reservations?
No objection.
Great, thank you. Charles, anything to add on this item before we begin? Board members, any questions for staff? I guess, Charles, one quick question I had. This was, I think in the memo, it talked about an amendment, and then here in our sort of summary, it talks about preliminary subdivision and site plan. Is it amendment, or is it a full?
So that could just be, that's just more of a nuance. We don't technically have an ordinance, an amendment procedure. It's just revisions, and the revision follows preliminary and final site plan procedures. So it's an amendment and a preliminary subdivision. There's just no real process. It's just the process-wise, it goes to a preliminary subdivision as a revision. So it's if that makes sense at all.
So it would be the applicant would go through the process of preliminary and final?
Yes.
This wouldn't just be a one amendment? Okay. Any thoughts from board members on that, questions? All right. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Good evening. My name is Mike Tadema-Wieland. I'm a civil engineer at Teradyne Consultants, and I'm here on behalf of the owners and developers of Cloverleaf Development. Their organization is called Cloverleaf Development LLC. Charles, could you bring up the plan? Yeah. If you want to keep introducing, I'll pull it up. I will, sure, yeah. So this is, this project, or this amendment, is related to the first phase and future phases of Cloverleaf development located at 986 Portland Road. There's a road, a named driveway there today called Merrill Drive. That project was approved by the planning board in June of 2022, and it was constructed, and construction was completed in 2025. And there are 120 apartments in 10 12-unit buildings there today. This board has in the past seen a sketch plan for a phase 2 of this development that will include more than 100 new units towards the back of this parcel, this 66-acre parcel, more or less. And that phase 2 is currently in the planning and design phase of the process. In order for the applicant to secure financing for phase 2, he's being told by his bank or by his financer that phase 1 needs to be on its own lot, and phase 2 needs to be on its own lot, and the commercial lot that will ultimately reside, or the commercial development that will be located on Portland Road needs to be on its own lot. So the amendment before you tonight is simply to create these 3 lots in order for the applicant to move forward with financing. There is another application that's already in the pipeline. It's already been submitted to planning for the phase 2 development. That currently, there's 126 units proposed. That's not this application. That application is going through review, and it will come before you as a subdivision and site plan review, I'm sure with a robust review process. We're hoping this can be a fairly simple amendment to the subdivision. Again, just creating 3 separate lots encompassing phase 1, which is already built, the future phase 2, and the commercial lot out front. In order to create these 3 lots, the applicant is proposing to create a private right-of-way, so a private drive. So for 200 feet, more or less, from Portland Road, the existing driveway that's there today, Merrill Drive, will be located within a 50-foot wide right-of-way. So essentially, we're drawing a right-of-way around the existing driveway, which was built to private road standards. And in order to meet the private road standards completely, there will be a hammerhead constructed on the right side of that 200-foot stretch of private drive. So again, just to summarize, the application before you is to create 3 lots and to construct a hammerhead, and that's it. We respect the process here, and we understand it's got to go through a multi-step process, but I guess if there is a way to sort of streamline this and get this done in fewer meetings than a typical, brand new subdivision or site plan might take place, it would be appreciated. If not, again, we defer to the process and to the board. That's it. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little bit confused in the sense that we're creating this private drive with easements with a hammerhead that's 224 feet long, obviously serving lot number 1, the future commercial lot, and it appears it would make it to lot 2, but we're going to allow the creation of lot 3 that has no access. Is that correct?
Which one is lot 3?
So
there's, I'm sorry, lot 1 is the commercial lot out front.
Lot 2 has the existing 120 units, and it looks like,
correct.
In my interpretation, lot 3 is the largest parcel to the north.
It is. So that will be accessed off the end of this private road, directly off the end of the hammerhead.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused then. We're creating this 240-foot piece, and allowing a hammerhead, because they're still having deeded access across Lot 2, why isn't the private road going all the way out to where it would make contact onto Lot number 3?
So the private road is there purely to create frontage for these 3 lots? And it does just that. It creates, the ordinance requires a minimum 50 feet of frontage, with the exception of lots that front on Portland Road, which need 200 feet of frontage. So Lot 1 will have 200 feet of frontage on Portland Road, and lots 2 and 3 will have a minimum 50 feet of frontage on the private road, Merrill Drive.
So I was confused at first, Jeff. Charles, is it possible to zoom in on that PDF document to the end of Merrill Drive there? So I think that's that's all right, thank you. So there's the Lot 1, from what I understand, and then, so that's where the hammerhead is, correct? At Merrill Drive.
Correct. Correct.
And
That's
then-
the new hammerhead, yeah, that he just zoomed in.
Correct, and then, so Lot 2, which has all of the units built, that's all part of it right there. And then Lot 3 begins right at
At the end of
L4, where that designation is L4. That's the start of Lot 3, correct?
And I'm happy to point at the monitor if it helps, but
I apologize, I didn't see the dash lines to the property line. It's a rather irregular cut, so,
It's peculiar, yeah.
gotcha.
It took me a few readings as well.
How is that yielding the frontage that's needed for Lot 3? It's fronting on a private road of 50 feet wide.
correct. And
But
that's all it needs.
I thought 50 feet was only for the lots that were fronting on the Portland Road.
No, they need 200 feet.
Okay.
Jim?
So, to follow up on Jeff's point, why have the hammerhead so close to Portland Road? Why not have it way at the back of the property after the existing buildings?
So there's, again, this right-of-way is being created in order to create frontage for legal lots. So it's as short as possible, essentially. And the private road has to terminate in a hammerhead or a cul-de-sac. So that's why it's located where it is. Also, that hammerhead will serve as the access point for that commercial lot. So it's not, in the future, it won't just be, a hammerhead to serve no other purpose than a turnaround. That will be essentially the driveway into the commercial lot there. And once you get past that hammerhead, there's ample space for emergency vehicles to turn around within the development that's already been built. Likewise, there's going to be ample space for emergency vehicles to turn around in the Phase 2 development as well. So a hammerhead farther into the site isn't really necessary for turning around for emergency vehicles or anything like that. And so it was created really as close to Portland Road as possible in order to minimize the length of the private road.
Okay. Well, that helps us understand that. This is an application completeness review, and I'm sure you've seen the staff memo,
I have, yes.
and there's a number of the items that we need to make sure are provided indicate that they've been received and they're adequate. Although there's a number of documents or items that are listed as more information required. Can you tell us about those and how they've been addressed or
Yeah.
can address them?
I can, yeah, sure. I'll just go right down through them if that's okay with you. So financial and technical capacity. The applicant, so some of these are, this being an amendment, some of these aren't applicable. And some of them, in our opinion, are, will ask for a waiver, essentially, because there is essentially a de minimis. But, so financial and technical capacity is one that if the board feels is applicable, then the applicant would request a waiver from the submission requirement for that. It's the same team that just built a 120-unit apartment complex successfully, and so hopefully that serves as evidence of financial and technical capacity to build a hammerhead. Proposed stormwater drainage. I think this stems from a question from Public Works, and the question was whether or not stormwater runoff from the hammerhead is being accounted for. And the answer is yes, it is. It's in the plans. The second plan in the plan set that was submitted shows the hammerhead will be sloped back towards Merrill Drive, and stormwater runoff will drain into a series of catch basins, and those catch basins will drain to the stormwater pond that was constructed as part of Phase 1. So stormwater runoff from the proposed hammerhead will be collected and treated in a stormwater management, best management practice. Homeowners association documents. I don't think that's applicable to this project for construction of a hammerhead.
Well, the question though on the form was whether or not you require any, to update any of the HOA documents that already exist, I guess, to account for this change. And I understand you to say that there aren't going to be any necessary changes to the homeowner documents. Is that your
I don't believe there
point?
will be, yeah.
Okay.
And when the Phase 2 project comes before the board, if the board feels the need to review homeowners association documents for that and how that will be, how the two developments will be owned and organized, then I think that can happen at that time.
Jeff, do you have a quick question?
Well, on the homeowners document, I was thinking that that's very critical. I mean, we're creating a private way that's going to service 3 lots, and what's the maintenance agreement? We had, in a public address tonight, that some people are surprised with some of these fees. How is this plowing and maintenance going to be cared for this 250-foot piece that people are going to, when it's built out, just assume it's part of the entire division? So I think it's very important that there are some documents that are going to be provided for how that's going to take place, and if at some point it's going to be absorbed into another entity, or if it connects all the way through, if it goes up for city offering. But in the meantime, I think it's vitally important that there's documents on how that's going to be maintained moving forward. So I think that's an important submission.
Okay. I completely understand, and we can provide some information on that. I think the difference here is this entire project development is going to be owned by a single owner. So clearly that owner will be responsible for maintenance of this private way. But I understand that that question exists, and in the future, I guess a piece could be broken off. So that's something we can certainly provide more information on.
Go ahead.
Respectfully, I think that, we're making there's a common owner right now for 3 lots, but there is something going on that they're requiring the creation of 3 lots, which the city, in the city's eyes, can be owned by anybody, and that could be sold. It could be something, unfortunately, could happen in a business relationship, and another party comes in and owns one of those lots. I think having all of these things in place prior to approval is extremely important.
Understood. Yep. We can provide that.
Is there an HOA document now for the condition that exists?
I don't believe there is. Because again, it's a single lot with a single development owned by a single entity.
Okay.
But I can see the need for some sort of road maintenance agreement or something.
Okay.
So can you continue on with
Yep.
the list for the site
Absolutely.
plan?
Yep. The next one I see on my list is topography. Again, a grading plan, there is a grading plan with existing and proposed topography shown on this sheet here. It's the bottom window. So that shows how the road will be sloped, how the hammerhead will be sloped. A utility plan is the next piece that the planner noted more information required. There are no new utilities here. There are utilities for Phase 2 already stubbed in to the end of the existing driveway, farther past to the end of the proposed private way. So there's no new utilities are proposed as part of this application.
However, Chair, if I may.
Jeff, yeah, go
However,
ahead.
would there need to be new easement wording for the utilities that are in existence that now are going to serve lots 2 and 3? If they're going through the section, which is now going to be a private way with some joint or common interest, I would think that that's important to have that broken out so that whoever owns lots 2 and 3, if they needed to make some utility repairs, they have easement.
Yeah, I think a note on the plan might take care of that. I think that probably is appropriate.
Yeah, so you're saying a note that says there's no utilities as part of this application?
No,
Is that-
more about an easement, essentially. An easement, if there's going to be an easement for utilities, it should be shown on the subdivision plan. Stormwater plan is the next item that was flagged. And the planner notes that the applicant should confirm whether the turnaround area will receive stormwater treatment. This may require updated stormwater documents. Again, as I've discussed, stormwater from the hammerhead is going to be directed into the pond that's already built. And as part of the design for that stormwater pond that was designed as part of the Phase 1 development, there was future development accounted for. Essentially, the entirety of that Lot 1 was assumed to be developed in creating the design for that stormwater pond. And that's just to say that the pond does have capacity to receive stormwater runoff from this proposed hammerhead. So no changes to the stormwater plan are necessary. And then the next on the list is existing and proposed easements, covenants, and deed restrictions. I think we've talked about that, addressing a road maintenance agreement and utility easements. If there are other easements anyone has in mind, I'm happy to talk about them.
Jeff?
I guess while we're on stormwater, I mean, DPW is asking about the treatment of the Hammerhead area. You're saying that it's already been calculated, which I think is great. It's a pretty simple presentation for them to check, and we can get verification from Adam. But does that need to be an easement if that water from the lot 1 is going to treatment on another parcel in stormwater? I'm not really sure. I think that would be something to get our city engineer's opinion on.
Yeah, it sounds like if the applicant can explain and show that, I'm sure that's can be answered.
And finally, at least on my list, applicable local and state permits. I don't think this application here for a private road requires any other local or state permits that I can think of. Again, the Phase 2 development certainly will, including an amendment to the site location and development permit. But I don't think this proposed Hammerhead does require any additional permitting.
Well, the checklist mentioned the wetlands review by, I think it's Normando Associates, as something that you would want to at least address as to
Yeah.
whether or not it applies or doesn't apply.
Agreed. So there are questions. The peer reviewer did have questions about, I think mostly setbacks to some of the natural resources in the back of the lot. I think those can be addressed. We've had some additional work done by wetland scientists, and we've met with DEP to talk about how some of these natural resources are to be regulated, what the setbacks are going to be, and where the setbacks are measured from. And we have some additional information that we expect to be able to share with Normando immediately, and we expect to resolve their questions in the next couple weeks. So I think hopefully by the time this is back before you for final approval, those will be addressed. But no concerns on our part. We think we have a pretty good handle on the natural resources. And really, the proposal before you today is nowhere near any existing wetlands. So this Hammerhead won't impact wetlands. That said, we do need to get those comments resolved for the future phase.
Well, one of the concerns I have is, I mean, I agree with you, financial and technical capacity. That would seem like it's pretty easy for you to come up with something. I mean, after building 120 apartments, it would seem pretty easy to show that you could, come up with your ability to go and actually make this work with this very, very short private road in the 3 lots. But I am a little concerned about some of the questions that have been raised about the stormwater drainage. And I think Jeff makes a very good point that if you're draining, if you're creating the 3 lots and then you're draining the runoff from one lot into another, there would need to be some documentation to show that that's acceptable. The homeowners association documents just for, road maintenance, but also utility easements would also seem pretty important. So I'm not sure that you've provided enough information to demonstrate the application's complete. I agree some of the items here are fairly small, but some of them, particularly the ones we've discussed with homeowners association, utility easements, stormwater, I'd like to see a little bit more on that before we said the application was complete. I don't know how the other board members feel.
Thank you, Jim. Jeff?
Well, Mr. Chair, I want to echo that. I wanted to kind of finish at the the applicable state and DO permitting with the Normando peer review. As staff, Normando peer review that's in this packet, they were sent out tasked with this application before us, correct? It's not like residual from the previous phase?
No, the date of that, I think I have it dated in the packet, but just to double check, it's from December.
December 30th?
Yes.
Correct. And so when I read that, because I was trying to get my bearings, the whole project at first, the way it was hashed for the 230 feet and the longer drive, but neither here nor there, Normando does a lot of peer reviews for us, and I find them to be very thorough, very clear, in a way that we can really understand. And this is the first time where I really got some flags where, their peer review, there's talk about a wetland of special significance plus 20,000 square feet of emergent marsh. And their recommendation was the Maine DEP may elevate the permit to a higher tier or an individual permit. And they find that alterations to the submitted plans are required to accurately reflect regulatory status of the wetlands on site. So it felt like, when I read that, having to see a lot of their reviews, hey, there's something pretty major going on in the depiction in the back. And I think you're great that you brought that forward. You were kind of talking more about setbacks. Sounds like they're talking about scope and size of the wetlands and that the permits might change. So granted, it's an application for this hammerhead and creating the lots, but there's a big issue here that was flagged by our peer review, and how it's going to tie into the applicable permits. So circling back to where Jim was coming from, between the stormwater drainage easements, no draft HOAs, the utility plan, and if there needs to be easements for that across this private way, the existing elements and covenants and deed restrictions which tie into that, and then this question about the wetland permitting, I feel like there's enough items here that I'm not comfortable finding the application complete, and I respect that you would like to, because on paper it looks like it's a pretty simple, idea, but I don't want the city to get in a position where we've just created 3 lots and for some reason there's different entities involved and now we're squabbling over access and drainage and utilities.
Yeah,
So,
I totally respect that. And finding an application complete is not approving an application. I know you folks know that. I think what you've asked for tonight is completely reasonable. No matter what the wetlands look like on site, this proposed private way is not going to impact a wetland, so there will be no wetland permitting associated with this application. So again, respectfully ask that the application be found complete. We'll return with the additional information that the board asked for, and hopefully get this wrapped up fairly quickly. Because I don't think there's a lot. This isn't a very complicated project here. This is a private road to create 3 lots, all of which are under common ownership. So the creation of these homeowners association documents or these road maintenance agreements or these utility easements are all very easily created. So.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions from board members? Joyce?
I guess I'd just echo Jim and Jeff's concerns that this is the application completeness checklist. So I don't believe we can find it complete this evening with these items outstanding. And I'd definitely like to see something for financial and technical capacity because, if there's more work to be done and more documentation to be done, it's not quite as simple as all that. And the fact is, Jeff's right. It's 3 lots under common ownership now, but there's no reason why they have to remain in common ownership, and things change
Agreed.
over time.
Yeah, my point is the creation of these easements and
right. Should be pretty
association
straightforward.
documents is very straightforward because it's under common ownership. But understood. I get your point and your concern, so I appreciate it.
Any other thoughts? Catherine?
I agree with everyone else that I think there's too many items on the checklist that are unresolved to find it complete tonight.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, can we get a date? Obviously, February 3rd is probably too close, but the second meeting in February is, if we kind of find some common ground, the applicant's feeling like they can easily get these documents generated. If we find, table for tonight and continue to second meeting in February, is that, seem like it would fit in the schedule?
Yeah, February 17th would be a good date. Would you want to schedule the public hearing as well? I think that'd be fine. That'd be appropriate. Mike, as part of this proposal, is the hammerhead component? I follow it, I understand it. Is that a requirement to make this work and make this successful as part of, that must happen as part of the application of what you're asking to do, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts from board members? Okay. I think these are fairly straightforward. There's a lot of land there. I think these are some good questions here. And it looks like the applicant can address these for that 17th deadline or meeting if the board finds it appropriate. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we continue application completeness, review of this matter, and also schedule a public hearing in this matter for February 17th.
I would second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion to continue application of completeness review to February 17th and schedule a public hearing for that same evening? Charles, so again, just to reiterate, make it clear, this is the initial project that this was a part of. That was one lot. So that's where this is becoming three. That's where this falls into that subdivision piece.
Yeah,
And then
so,
with the site plan. So initially, that was a different. We had there was multiple units in there, so that's the creation of the three lots here. That's what's triggering.
Yeah.
So part of an amendment and then part of the preliminary subdivision. Yep. Is that how I understand it?
So if there's a creation of a new lot in a subdivision, it needs to go back to the planning board. If it's a minor, like a lot adjustment, lot line, easements, it can be a minor subdivision amendment or revision, and it can go back to that. But in this case, because it's the creation of additional lots, it has to go back to the planning board, and that follows preliminary plan approval.
Okay.
And so this is phase one. We have received, this is amendment to phase one. We have also received the application for phase two, which will be before the planning board for the first time for completeness on the 17th as well. So I think we're going to have two concurrent reviews going on here. Nature of, when the applications came in and how many we have. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And I'll work behind the scenes to figure out how to coordinate those, manage those, and provide some guidance and clarity for you guys.
All right, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor of the motion? Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. And we will see you on the 17th.
Thanks, folks.
And we appreciate it. Thank you. All right, our next item on our agenda this evening is item 6B. This is a continued public hearing for preliminary subdivision and site plan and conditional use at 42 Ferry Road, map 22, lot 34. And this is for 25 single-family condominium units within the medium-density residential zoning district. And this is presented by Big Ledge LLC this evening. Charles, any updates on this before we begin?
I would say just in the after-the-fact packet, you did receive, I think, 2 public comments for 42 Ferry Road. So just to note those here, let you guys look at those. That's all on our end right now.
All right, great, thank you. Board members, any conflicts or disclosures on this item before we begin? All right, and we have the applicant with us this evening.
Good evening. My name is Craig Burgess with Acorn Engineering. Here tonight on behalf of Big Ledge LLC. I do have a short presentation. I believe this is how I... The presentation I have focuses on sort of the 3 bigger items that I think have been brought up during the course of the project. And those are the Seal Rock Spring, the location of that, stormwater, specifically the flows going off the site, and the spring-fed pond that we looked at during the site walk, both site walks. Do you know if I have? Sorry.
If you don't mind me jumping in. Yeah, you're good. Sorry. I dealt with something lately. And then get them back here. And you can just share.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's just the plans, yeah.
So on the screen here, this is an old survey plan prepared by Dow and Coulomb. This plan was prepared in the late 70s, and this is one of 2 survey plans that identifies the location of Seal Rock Spring, which is in general alignment with the shoreland map that the city of Saco has currently adopted. So highlighted on this plan, just for your reference, I highlighted just the property which is located right over here. To the top is west, to the bottom is east. So this is the location of Seal Rock Spring. Again, in general alignment with the current shoreline map. Another plan prepared in the 80s, very similar, prepared by Dow and Coulomb, again, identifies the location of Seal Rock Spring over here. So if you remember when we were on the site walk, we walked down to this corner. This is point of analysis 3, identified in our stormwater management report. And this is where we saw the natural drainage channel flowing north. We'll just continuing up that about 350 feet or so is where Seal Rock Spring is located. Again, I know that there's a lot of public input about the location of this. I just go with the credibility of the fact that we have 2 stamp boundary surveys of a reputable surveyor that's been in Saco and knows Saco very well. So I do have these 2 survey plans identifying the location of Seal Rock Spring. Further looking into this project, this is a historic aerial that I was able to download. This is from 1960. And you can see that there's a clearing approximately in this area here. The red represents the site. This is the approximate location of Seal Rock Spring. You can see kind of the clearing going up to where that bottling facility is, and there's still that existing structure today on Old Orchard Road. Also important to note on this plan is the absence of that pond that we looked at during the site walk. Going back to the survey plan that I did find, that pond is located right about there where it's noted as Old Gravel Pit. So I believe that that is actually a man-made pond, constructed sometime between when this aerial was taken and when this plan was prepared, which is the late 70s. Whenever that gravel pit area was mined, I do believe that that pond that's there is a man-made pond related to the old gravel pit. I did share this graphic during the planning board site walk, the second one. And this generally identifies the location of Seal Rock Spring compared to the lot. Also notes where the data set for the Goosefair Brook Urban Impaired Stream watershed is. I think at this point that's moot because the public works engineer has since agreed with our interpretation, had a conversation with DEP, and now understands that this project is outside the Goosefair Brook Urban Impaired Stream watershed. Zooming in on this plan, and as discussed during the other planning board meetings and during the site walks, this site could be divided in 3 separate drainage areas, identified on the plans and in the report as POIs, point of interest 1, 2, and 3. Point of interest 1 goes out to Ferry Road. Some of the changes we have made at the recommendation of the engineer was to design a closed drainage system which will improve drainage on Ferry Road. And our latest response did just that. So there is a catch basin in Ferry Road. Go ahead, Jeff.
Just some people are indicating they have a hard time hearing. If you could be a
sure.
little bit closer to the mic.
So point of interest 1, located at Ferry Road here. And as part of the project, there is an outlet control structure in the basin. There is a catch basin in the road. And both of those catch basin structures tie into a drain manhole. And then the project is proposing to direct the stormwater past the driveway here with a new pipe. So the existing driveway culvert at this residence to the immediate east, that will be removed and rebuilt with this closed drainage pipe. Point of interest 2, which is located on the westerly side of the site. We walked over to this location. We looked at where that outfall, the outlet will be located. I think this is one of the more contentious point of interest because this is draining to that pond that we looked at. And as part of our stormwater management report, it was important that we design these systems so that we reduce the peak rates of interest at all these points of interest. This table here, table 4, this is in the stormwater report. Table 4 identifies the peak rates of runoff and how they're reduced by how much. I also looked at the volumes at the different point of interest at all 3 interest points. And at point of interest 1, we're reducing that by about 1,600 cubic feet. So if everyone can picture like what a milk crate looks like, how big that is, so it's about 1,600 of those that we're reducing the overall volume of runoff leaving the site. Point of interest 2, which drains to that man-made pond, we're reducing the amount of volume by 567 cubic feet. Again, 567 milk crates. And point of interest 3, which is located roughly over here, that has the biggest reduction because there's a good-sized infiltration basin just above it over here. And we're reducing the volume on that by just over 6,200 cubic feet. So I wanted to present that. I know that we had discussed numbers, and I tried to think about how to best illustrate what a cubic foot is, and milk crate, I think, is a good example for that. So with that, I feel like we've provided thorough responses to the comments that we received. We did get a chance to review the engineer's minor comments that we received just last week and issued an email to Charles with a plan that addressed his comments. We also received the landscape architecture comments, most of which are pretty minor in nature. We do intend to show the shrubs within the landscape buffer. So that is a change that's currently in process. We should have that next week back to the city. We feel that's pretty minor in nature. The shrubs, in combination with the trees, which are shown on the landscape plans, will create a really good, nice, robust landscape buffer in general conformance with the city's standards. We also had a chance in December to respond to the traffic review comments, and it was generally indicated in their comments that they didn't question the peak trips that we calculated, and they agree that a traffic analysis is not required for this project because of the overall amount of daily trips that will be produced here. So we did provide a response, and we feel like their comments were, again, pretty minor in nature, as well as the lighting peer review that we received. We did get a chance to respond back to that. We feel at this point we're in pretty good shape, and hopefully tonight we can gain preliminary approval from the board. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you with any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant at this time? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a few things written down. The fire department confirmation that all dwellings were within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. And I believe your response was like 776 feet or something, and it fell within that, so you satisfied that requirement. I wanted to confirm, I think you mentioned it, that the DPW determined with the main DEP that discharge from point of interest 3, I believe, or actually 2 and 3, right, both of them that are heading that way, are into a stream that is not regulated by the main DEP
Correct.
as part of the urban impaired stream for Goose Fairbrook.
Correct.
Right?
Because it's tidally influenced. I also had a conversation with Maine DEP about that.
Mm-hmm. It's just, that's one of the things in our review that we're looking at is of a high priority, these impaired streams, and having that determination made helps me make my decision. There was a talk about the truck turning templates for the fire department, a couple places where they would have to mount the curb and possibly discharge exit. And I think it was from the peer review. And their question was, has that been checked with the fire department? And I'm wondering, did they use the right templates or, you know, for the vehicles, or can you clarify that?
Yeah, so I think that was, and I did talk to the peer reviewer about it. The lines were really close to the curb, and he was looking at the front bumper line of that fire apparatus. So the front bumper does go over the curb in some places where there's tight corners, which is completely fine. And I've designed turns where the fire bumper goes over the curbs. But the wheels of the fire truck actually stay within the roadway. So we did slightly revise those as part of our response to not show the wheel line as close to the curb, to provide it shows that there's a little bit more flexibility than they probably thought.
So I guess my question, it's addressed, but I would feel better as we move forward if we could just have the fire department weigh in, say, yes, you know, the templates were correct, because we do see that all the time. You have that overswing on the double lines, and it's a little misleading until, you know, it was explained to me the first time I questioned it, said, hey, the truck's going off the pavement. Then I was wondering, Craig, because this one was directed at you with regards to one of the meetings at the Conservation Commission. There was a question of the pre and post runoff rates. And I didn't know how to take it. It was basically that, you know, your reply was that, oh, it's a comparison of apples and oranges. And was that just kind of taken out of context? Because so oftentimes, I mean, I watched enough of these with the presentations and your system designs and how, yes, you know, the physical site changes because of the impervious areas you're creating and you're channelizing it, but that's what the HydroCAD modeling is doing, is calculating these volumes. So can you just kind of explain, or do you recall that, what that comment was about?
I did see that comment yesterday when I was reviewing the comments from the neighbors, and I don't remember the exact context of how I said that. I think it's important to note that during the course of this project, I have always said that we've designed these stormwater management systems so that there will be less runoff in the proposed condition when you're looking at peak rates of runoff as compared to the existing. So that's always been my priority as part of this project, is to make sure that there's going to be less flow in the existing, less flow in the proposed condition than existing.
Then there was another public comment that brought up our zoning article 230, 1404E12 about conditional use application requirements and all physical features within 200 feet of the site. And I believe that a couple of your follow-up plans then had that. I feel like you've addressed it. And did you intentionally give another submission for that?
Yeah, the latest plans, that full set of plans that were received did show that man-made pond.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I guess my final question, Mr. Chair, is for staff. I was looking through the Conservation Commission's meeting minutes that were provided, and is there more that's going to be provided? I felt like that was pretty vague as far as their findings. Is there a document that was going to be like a more formal report? It seemed like a meeting minutes to me saying, hey, we had concerns about trees and we had concerns about runoff and we asked questions about this, but I don't feel like they issued a report, and the zoning ordinance says that they shall issue a report with their findings. And I don't know if any other board members read it. I just kind of felt like it was a little vague. It's like, this is what we talked about, but we haven't made a determination if we feel like trees of significance need to be included. We haven't made a determination about runoff.
Yeah, it didn't seem like there were any, I guess, requests or recommendations as to here's what we saw, here's what we want to see preserved or protected.
Okay, that's
No,
kind of how I felt it.
It's not just you.
Okay.
Are you all set, or are you still?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, those are the topics that I had highlighted. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just had one, and it relates to comments during the site walk, and I get it's a question for you, Craig. I think one of the things that someone had expressed concerns about during the site walk wasn't so much the change in the number of cubic feet of water runoff. It's more the fact that if the water is redirected and channeled in some way, that there might be a higher intensity when there is a storm. So it's more like it's not spread out over the whole area of this current property. Now it's going to be channeled, and it's more of a fire hose effect. I think that was something that people were getting the impression that water is going to be shooting off the property in a concentrated manner. And so even if there's less water, it's coming out faster and more intensely.
How runoff will be discharged at point of interest number 2 will be through a 4-inch pipe. And before it flows through that 4-inch pipe, it then has to go, before that, it has to go through a 2-inch orifice. There's a little Nileplast basin. So on that pipe, there's an orifice cap. So it's flow that is going into that wetland has to go through a 2-inch hole before it goes into the 4-inch pipe, so that we control the rate of the runoff going to that wetland. And that's very intentional so that it meets Maine DEP stormwater standards. So all the flow is essentially going through a 2-inch hole. So it's not a lot of water that's directed to that wetland. On just about every project that comes before the board or that has to meet Maine DEP requirements, you somehow have to treat runoff. And the only way where you're not able to discharge it back to the adjacent property as sheet flow is when it goes through a buffer, wooded buffer, vegetated buffer. And you can't design buffers on every project. They're my preferred way to treat runoff, but in a project like this, it's not a practical use to use a buffer for stormwater treatment. So then we have to resort to a best management practice such as an underdrain soil filter or infiltration basin. But we designed that this is an underdrain soil filter at this location. It was designed in a way so that the runoff, it's really just a trickle of runoff. It's not like a 12-inch pipe that will be flowing full. It's a 4-inch underdrain pipe, But as I mentioned, it has to go through a 2-inch hole before it goes through that 4-inch pipe.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other thoughts? Jim?
Craig, just a couple. One was, I know you've shown us that map before, and I think you, my memory is that you showed that to us on one of the sidewalks, but you've added information down below, which I think was designed to answer a number of the neighbors' questions about the amount of runoff and the change, and so I certainly appreciate that. Regarding, Jeff asked a question about the turning radius for fire trucks, which is very important. I didn't realize until after Jeff asked the question that I had written that one down too. But there was also a question on the traffic, by the traffic reviewer about trash trucks turning around because this will be private haul trash. And have you checked the turning radius for those vehicles as well as to where you have your trash receptacles?
We have checked that. We don't have plans that show it, but generally, if a fire truck can get through the site, a garbage truck or UPS truck will be easily able to do the same. As part of the next submission, we can certainly provide those plans, but I don't expect any issues there with being able to, with the ability to have a fire truck pass through the site.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Catherine?
I also had a question on the traffic. They mentioned the proposed clubhouse being available for only residents. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, I also, okay, my questions were answered by the other two as well.
Joyce?
Traffic, the connectivity to the Ferry Road sidewalk, would the developer even have the ability to create a crosswalk and connectivity to the sidewalk? I guess I'm thinking, isn't Ferry Road a state route? Is this something the city of Saco can even do without state approval?
It's a good question. We haven't really explored that. Our initial plans that we presented at the PDRC committee did show the walkway going out to Ferry Road, but it was brought up by the police department that they didn't want that connection and crosswalk at Ferry Road.
Because I mean, you know, I'd be all for a crosswalk at Harbor Drive. I mean, I drive down Ferry Road every day, and I frequently see people crossing the road there, and it amazes me that there's no crosswalk.
Yeah, we removed it at the request of the police department.
So it's the police department doesn't want people crossing here, so they think if there's no crosswalk, no one will cross the road?
Yeah, it was brought up by traffic. I guess I would encourage maybe we can try to have a meeting with staff about that issue. I know it's been brought up a couple times now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just this site, it's the area in general. It seems like a crosswalk in that area is long overdue.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members? Jeff?
So I guess, Mr. Chairman, my question would be to Joyce. Are you feeling like there's warrant to be investigating the possibility of infrastructure improvements on this side of the street to try to get to Harbor Drive? Because that is typically within our purview, requesting infrastructure extensions.
I guess the thing is, extending to Harbor Drive just gets you to another, I think it's a private road, Harbor Drive. It doesn't get people over to the sidewalk. So unless the police department wants a crosswalk put in, I don't know. I don't know as you're gaining a heck of a lot. People would just get access to Harbor Drive.
I guess my thing was, it's the time for conversation, right? Part of our criteria is the connectivity and walkability of our community, and this growth, this density is incentivized because it's near the infrastructure of sewer and water. In conjunction with that, we shouldn't just be thinking what's underground, is do we consider what's above ground? And maybe have the police department revisit that and say, hey, would it be more productive to have this sidewalk section?
Yeah.
We oftentimes miss that. We oftentimes miss that on applications. And
No, I think you're right. I mean, sidewalk to Harbor Drive, because again, I think at some point there has to be a crosswalk. And it's most likely to come at Harbor Drive. But yeah, I think that is a good point to have a conversation about.
I mean, personally, I don't know if that is really going to help a lot. I think I've mentioned on this project before, I lived for 12 years at 10 Ferry Road, so I'm pretty familiar with what's now called a sidewalk on the other side of the road, but used to be called a bike path that was built by the Rotary Club, as I understand it, and somehow the city took it over and renamed it a sidewalk. That said, you know, I appreciate the problem. I don't see that there's a good solution here unless someone's to build a sidewalk all the way from this project down to the Old Orchard Road or something, or down to Harbor Drive. But I don't see that as particularly practical. At least for this project, it seems like a conversation that the city should have, you know, city council should have about extending sidewalks along Ferry Road that goes way beyond our purview. So I'm not as concerned about the fact that there isn't, you know, a direct access to the sidewalk across the street. That's just my opinion.
I would just like to touch base that, yeah, it's great if we pushed it off to the city council, but then it's all our taxpayers that are bearing the cost, you know, and this is an important piece. It's part of our responsibility. It's part of what's tasked upon us with the comprehensive plan, is to think of these things, right? And it's one link in a chain. And if we're not proactive on each one of these projects and try to put one more link, I think that we're missing the overall opportunity to enhance our community. And we're hearing from people, and we'll hear from people tonight, about how this is an issue. I mean, if this is going to be, you know, all of these units, people are going to want to recreate. This is going to be, and they're not going to be playing on their side yards. They might be walking to go to the Lower Hill Cemetery to enjoy some of the greenery in there. We need to give them a path. And it may be that this applicant is only a small chunk, and it's a stranded chain link, and it'll connect later on. But I don't think we should just turn our backs because it doesn't have a complete purpose today. And yeah, so you guys know how I feel. We need to stick to it, every single piece, trying to enhance, because these other parcels might be changing their type of density coming up shortly, right? It's the infill of the utilities that the city is tasked us with overseeing. So getting in one chain link for this project might not be a bad thing, it'd be a good opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know we spoke about sidewalks early on this project, and I believe we saw a concept of a location, and I think that's where the police department and pedestrian and traffic committee, I think that's where they were at odds of where that location was, but I couldn't find that quickly enough here in our documents. But I know we've had this conversation before, but perhaps the applicant.
Having that conversation, but bringing it forward and making sure that the pedestrian committee is thinking greater than just what was drawn on a plan. Hey, do you think this is a good idea? Oh, no, it's not the best location. They can give us our feedback, just like I would have expected from our conservation report. Hey, we recognize that it would be much better being further down by Bayview Drive so that, you know, the Seal Rock campus could utilize it, and it becomes a centralized location. If we have a strobe beacon or whatever, because we starting to put those everywhere, try to minimize those locations so that they have more bearing and precedence and noticeability versus another stimulant. We need to know if they want us to be 700 feet down the ferry road, we need to put what chain links we can as we can in at a time.
You're talking about crosswalk, not sidewalk, but both.
I'm
Yeah,
talking
I mean, I
about-
like the idea of a sidewalk to Harborview Drive. And
Chair, may I jump in and just add some
Yeah,
context?
sure.
I think the comment I got from the board is to talk about the police department initially had said, and this was before I joined, but I know I'm familiar with their comments, that they didn't want a sidewalk. They were citing safety hazards, but there is some comments from the traffic third-party reviewer about sidewalk and connectivity. I'm hearing that from Member Brochu over there as well. What I can do is go back to both the police department and our track reviewers to see. I think we're kind of stepping towards larger, policy goals. Like if we had a larger transportation or connectivity plan that we can refer to and help guide the applicant. Right now, we don't have that. I think your comments are well received. But for this application, what I can do is go back to the police department representatives and our traffic consultant, see what is possible, what is potential under code. And I hear that the board has expressed, interest in that connectivity issue. I think we have some tools to make that happen, but we would just want to make sure that we're not going against the recommendations of the police department, and we can work it out. But I just didn't want us to, keep talking in a circle around it.
Sure, thank you.
Understandable, but if I recall, there's a section in our ordinance that says it's the burden of the board to determine how far off-site improvements and sidewalks are to be added. It's part of our review, and I just want it to be brought up, and, we can go into it blindly and ignore what the police department said and say, put it in. I think this is just a more cumulative conversation and saying that it is an interest of ours, and we're not forgetting about our responsibility to the city in this review process.
Sure, thank you. Jason?
So, originally we had this in. It's not like we're not trying to do it, okay? We sat down with Public Works and Police Department, and they said, absolutely not. There's a little crest of a hill, people speed over that hill, and they say by putting in a sidewalk, you're basically introducing people to say, hey, this is a safe area to cross, okay? Now, people don't walk at the speed of traffic, okay? They go a lot slower. Somebody comes over the hill, they're speeding, and they hit somebody that's in that crosswalk. Now there's a big problem. So this is what they're trying to avoid. This is the whole reason why they said absolutely not, we don't want that. So, pulling out with a vehicle, it's not a big deal, but crossing a road, walking at 1 mile an hour or whatever it is, or if somebody's got a cane or something and they're walking really slow, even with the signal flashes, it doesn't give them enough time for somebody that's coming over the crest of the hill. So this is the reason why they said no. So you could say, well, who cares what they think? But evidently it's like, I'll put it in if that's what you want. But when somebody gets hurt, it's the police department and everybody else that has to go see this and say, why did our planning board allow this to happen?
I think it's very clear that we differentiate the sidewalk and the actual crosswalk, the point of crossing. And that's what I'm trying to get from the conversation is where do our experts feel the best place for the crosswalk would be, and how do we get there? We need a sidewalk, because we're not going to put a sign at the end of the street that says crossing of Ferry Road prohibited, no pedestrian crossing. Right? People are going to want to walk from there, and I agree that this is probably not the best place for a crosswalk to actually get across the road, but we need to provide connectivity to get to the safest harbor to locate that crosswalk, whichever direction, our experts in the city feel that is. I think we need to be cognizant of that. That's why I'm thinking sidewalk, not necessarily crosswalk directly across from this project. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Jeff. So, Charles, back to your point, if you could inquire with maybe DPW and the police department on an overall master plan and thoughts and intents on Ferry Road, I think that might help add some clarity here and see what the plan is. Because I agree with Jeff that the intent here isn't every street that we have a crossing across Ferry Road. So strategically located and planned, I think, is the intent and the understanding. So, and Councilor Johnson, did you have a thought, comment?
Yeah, I did, and I don't want to insert myself into your deliberations, but I think some context is important. I completely agree with Jeff's assessment here. And there's been a failure in the process for many years, and I've continually watched the planning board try to figure out many of these similar objectives, and you're met with this, well, so-and-so, so whatever. In this particular case, you have, I believe it's the police chief, and that's fine, and I understand that came out of a PDRC meeting, but the ordinance that we have in the city of Saco is under the Traffic Safety Committee, which I am a member of. If you read that ordinance, it's clear that that committee determines where the siting of traffic control devices are. The problem is that we're never asked for subdivision or project review. It's again, it's a systematic failure throughout the city. It's something I hope to change in the near future. But again, this is an instance where we haven't been asked. It's the chief himself has said this is not going to be acceptable, which I beg to differ in the fact that we have a body that makes that determination, not the police chief himself. Now, his reasonings might make some sense. I might even agree with some of it, but I do think that a sidewalk may be warranted, or at least an explanation as to why the crosswalk isn't warranted. So I'll leave it at that, but I'd like to see some follow-up with traffic safety. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members? So with that, if the board is ready, we also have this item scheduled for a public hearing this evening.
Mr. Chair, I move to open the public hearing for 42 Ferry Road.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on opening the public hearing for this item? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. If anyone is with us this evening that would like to speak on this item, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. We have received many items of public comment, which is great. I just want to let the public know that we don't expect you to read your public comment. It's not necessary, but if you would like to give a summary and any additional information or comment on anything that's been discussed, please go ahead.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Chairman. Let's get this adjusted. Can everybody hear me okay? Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. I am going to read this. Thank you in advance for your valuable time and attention, and Happy New Year.
Can you give your name and address for the record?
Oh, yes, David Rewinkle, 32 Ferry Road. Thanks for the reminder. So I have 4 items on my agenda today, plus a short summary. First item, Resource Protected Overlay District. And we have a lot in common, Craig and I, today, and the things that we wanted to cover. We just learned a few months ago that the spring on our land is in fact a protected resource. For the rest of my time today, I may refer to Seal Rock Spring as SRS for short. If the RPOD protected SRS is located in our backyard at 32 Ferry Road, as we believe, there would have to be a 100-foot radius, which is a 0.72 acre circular no-build zone that would heavily impact the development potential of both my parcel and the adjacent 42 Ferry parcel, as the 100-foot radius crosses our shared property line. We'd all prefer that the SRS was not part of the equation, but it's there, and facts are facts. Now, my second item is plotting the SRS. At the Conservation Commission meeting on December 17th, a member of the commission asked the city planner the location of the SRS and was it known. Mr. Tettleman replied affirmatively and showed them the Dow and Coulomb plan from 1987, pointing to the spot that my wife, Suzanne Casano, referred to as the brick ruin. In her letter to the board, dated on December 10th, 2025, There is more about the brick ruin coming up in my comments. That December 10th letter outlines her research and the deeds dating back to 1850, including verifiable evidence of multiple places where spring water was tapped over the decades outside of just the Seal Rock Spring. And there is some detail here, so you may wish to review that letter again if you can, when you can. Included in that packet, in that letter, are historical records and articles describing the distances in feet and miles from the Quonset hut and the post office to the SRS location. The distance clues that we've discovered are a big part of why we are certain that the brick ruin is not the original SRS. Please look at the attached map in the packet that was sent. They look like this. You can see. I'm not going to get into those right now. The distance clues that we discovered are a big part of why we're certain the brick ruin is not the SRS. Please look at the attached map showing the 908-foot radius from the back of the Quonset hut, specifically how it lines up with the SRS location in our backyard. It's a smoking gun. You can see that the radius to the brick ruin does not line up to this 908 assertion from historical records. It is too far away to be located there by 170 feet. And further, an excerpt from The Underground Waters of Southern Maine, a Department of the Interior U.S. Geological Survey published in 1909, says that Seal Rock Spring in the town of Saco, about 1 1/4 miles east of the post office, is the Seal Rock Spring owned by Mr. M.A. Levitt, who owned it before the Codys. And there's some other details. But at that time, the post office was located at 262 Main Street, Saco, not exactly where it is now. This per the Biddeford and Saco directory number 18. Using Google's measuring tool, 262 Main is exactly 1 1/4 mile to the Ferry Road entrance to my driveway. This is a strong piece of historical evidence, and since the measurement confirms the distance, it suggests that the 1987 Dow and Coulomb plan identifies a secondary pumping site, not the original. That secondary site is almost certainly the brick ruin that we referred to that Mr. Tiedelman says is the actual SRS. I know we're getting in the weeds here. Taking it to the third point today, the permitted alterations. The abutters have provided research to the board showing that the SRS water was pumped continuously from 32 Ferry Road property to the nearby garage and bottling plant on my land at 32 Ferry until at least 1949. At that time, per articles that we have provided the planning board, I hope you've all read it, new pipes were installed at that time to pump that water exactly 908 feet from 32 Ferry north to the new Quonset hut location on Old Orchard Road. This pumping went on till at least 1960 and perhaps longer. Sometime after 1960, the Codys tapped into and approved a permitted alteration to the spring, to the Seal Rock Spring, a second source, the brick ruin, for the bottling plant located at on Old Orchard Road. So just let's please note that a permitted alteration is to the SRS does not make that alteration now magically that's the spring. There's the original spring, and if there are alterations or places where it's tapped into down the line, those are alterations that are permitted. The Codys made that permit, did that permitting. So sometime after 1960, the Codys tapped into and approved a permitted alteration, the second source, a 25-foot wide, 475-foot easement was granted in 1960 that allowed Seal Rock Springs to access and install a new set of water pipes from the brick ruin to the bottling plant. No one seems to know exactly when the secondary pumping site began precisely, and we also don't know when the Codys stopped providing water to the operation from 32 Ferry. So there's a gap in the knowledge that none of us have. But what we do know is that the applicant cannot prove without absolute certainty that the resource-protected Seal Rock Spring is not on my property. They can't prove that. They don't have anything to prove that. So therefore, we state that the board should not approve this application. Planning board members have a responsibility to ensure that no harm is done to the abutters. Perhaps we can help on that front with our research and with limited access to our property if that's needed. My last topic is runoff. My wife and I, which was covered in depth by Craig. So we share a property line with 42 Ferry Road, about 675 feet of it. With regard to the ongoing runoff discussion, the applicant continues with the narrative that runoff there will be less than on the whole as compared to the current state today. And while the volume total of runoff for the entire site might decrease due to drainage systems, a concentrated discharge, not a fire hose, but a concentrated discharge will occur when water that was once distributed across the 675-foot distance is instead funneled into a single point. And guess where it's pointed? At my land. So I'm sorry that it's not as feasible as the applicant would like it to be, but they're going to have this overflow flowing onto my land, which is also a few feet away from a wetland and adjacent to the spring-fed pond that the abutters have been talking about for months. This is particularly relevant if the pond is connected to the SRS aquifer, as we believe that it is. So a question, I don't expect you to answer in this forum, but how is it legal to design and approve a system that captures the runoff only to concentrate it into the worst possible place? It's technically a trespass of water if it causes damage. And board members, I'd like to ask that you dive into the applicant and ask just how this is legal. So in closing, my summary for the board, the absolute, quote-unquote, absolute certainty of the spring's original location is the pivotal point of this application. We believe that the 1987 Dow and Coulomb plan identified a secondary site. This leaves you with our diligent research and clues that actually align with the logistical history of the bottling operation. Again, please see for yourself with the attached images. You have the power to ask the hard questions and make decisions. It's in your purview. You can get more answers and bring this to a just conclusion to deny the application or at least to table it until we have more answers. Thank you. In closing, I would welcome a smaller project that is consistent with the neighborhood. Mr. Chairman and board members, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Board. My name is Maggie Mondak, and I'm an abutter at 29B Old Orchard Road, with standing in the 42 Ferry project. I agree with my neighbor's concerns. I am not opposed to development, but I am deeply concerned about the sufficiency of this application and the potential impacts on my property, my neighbor's properties, and the surrounding area. Specifically, the application remains incomplete in critical respects, including existing conditions within 200 feet. There is a freshwater pond, historically documented spring source at 32 Ferry, and an aquifer. A comprehensive environmental assessment is missing. The burden of proof is on the applicant, and I urge the board to require full documentation-backed findings before any further consideration. The freshwater pond on our properties that Craig indicated this evening the 42 will drain into is documented in the National Wetlands Inventory, and it is not stagnant water in a gravel pit. It holds fish, frogs, ducks, great blue herons, and turkeys all bring their young there, and we have provided photos as evidence. Great blue heron are federally protected, and this project will endanger them. There are legitimate concerns about stormwater and water quality given the proximity to wetlands, Goose Fair Brook watershed, and the vibrant freshwater pond on our properties. I request a detailed hydrologic and water quality review, including a cumulative impact analysis to ensure no degradation of wetlands or groundwater. The plan's density and impervious surface is clearly excessive for the site, with potential for increased runoff, flooding risk, and adverse effects on neighboring properties, including mine. 42 Ferry Road is 3.7 acres, with much of it sloping downward towards 4 acres of fresh water, including the pond, per the National Wetlands Inventory. The area is already wet, and flooding already occurs, with introduced pavement, steeper runoff towards the pond, and harsher storm events. That water and whatever chemicals it carries from roofs, pavements, a parking lot, a pool area, it will not have time to be absorbed and will enter the pond, flood 29A, our property and driveway, and contaminate the pond and the adjacent wetlands. Trees. We need clear information on tree protection along the property line, as well as professional assessment of any potential weakening of the abutters' trees. Our house is right near the property line, and we will be directly affected by the weakening of trees along the boundaries due to the root damage caused by groundworks. Traffic and pedestrians. The application fails to address impacts on high crash intersections or provide safe pedestrian access. Given these concerns, I respectfully request that the board either A, require that the applicant address all incomplete elements with objective, verifiable data, including an RPOD-compliant environmental review, or B, deny the application or continue the public hearing until a complete and adequate submission is provided. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Planning Board members and staff, good evening. My name is Suzanne Casano, 32 Ferry Road. In reviewing the packet materials this weekend, I noticed the actual site plans for 42 Ferry were missing, and as of yesterday, those plans were not in the packet or listed under planning projects under review on the city website. So based on the January 16th packet, Friday, the September application, and the November 12th, 2025 Tradewind site plans, I've compiled a list of questions that remain unaddressed by the applicant and peer reviews and the city. I emailed these to you all today, and they should be in your after-the-fact packet. So in the interest of time, I've condensed these thoughts for this public hearing to the following questions. Just a few regarding the location of Seal Rock Spring, since my husband, David Rewinkle, just covered this. Has the city or the applicant uncovered any resources other than the 1977 and 1987 Dow and Coulomb plan that outlines the original source of Seal Rock Spring? What data did Dow and Coulomb use to plot the spring at that location? And has the city or board confirmed this data? What else has the city done to physically locate Seal Rock Spring? Regarding Saco's 2022 comprehensive plan, what data was used to plot the green dot on page 69? And why is the spring not definitively labeled? We all need to be sure about this so that we don't open up a bunch of cans of worms at some later date. Questions regarding site design and density. Have the actual existing conditions of the site and adjacent properties, including homes, wetlands, and the pond, been adequately documented by the applicant? Why are the driveways 18 feet wide? This allows for 2 cars to park side by side, potentially increasing the vehicle count from 60, as proposed by the applicant, to 85. Why are 10 additional parking spots necessary when every unit already has a garage and a driveway? Why add unnecessary impermeability? Why is the applicant reserving the right to own and maintain a majority of the units as rentals? Does Big Ledge plan to use this or to run this as an apartment complex? Questions regarding safety and traffic. Have local safety studies been scheduled specifically during the peak beach season? The December 10th VHP peer review questions still have not been answered, and those are, is this an age-restricted community? Is the clubhouse open to the public? Is the lack of connectivity to the Ferry Road sidewalk a safety issue? Is there sufficient room for garbage trucks to turn around? Will site traffic exacerbate known high crash locations, such as the intersection of Ferry and Old Orchard Roads? These are not minor issues, as asserted by Mr. Burgess today. And if the crosswalk / sidewalk requirement is being waived by the police chief, what specific measures will the applicant or the city take to keep residents safe? Also, if traffic speed is a problem, as Mr. Labonte just stated, how is it safe to even add a driveway entrance / exit from this location for such a dense development? Questions regarding environmental impact. How is it acceptable for the applicant to point a 10-inch wide emergency overflow pipe directly onto my property at 32 Ferry Road per drawing 3-31? Have hydrogeological surveys been scheduled to determine the size of the aquifer and the impact of blasting or earth moving on surrounding wetlands and 200-year-old foundations? What was the Conservation Commission's formal advice following their December 17th meeting? Regarding the Acorn Engineering email from January 14th, where's the record of the applicant being denied access to survey trees on adjacent properties? Where is the missing wetlands review acknowledged in the same email? Questions regarding other missing information. Where are the most recently revised site plans, and what is the strategy to make these available to the public in a timely manner? Has the lighting plan been updated to include the 3 missing fixtures identified by Wright Pierce? Has drawing C12 been updated to reflect the applicant's verbal statement that there will be no snow plowing on site? While Saco needs affordable housing, developing must be thoughtful. This proposal is too dense, and the application remains fundamentally incomplete. Without updated plans, wetland reports, hydrogeological, traffic, and tree studies, the public cannot provide informed testimony, and the board cannot approve this application. I've asked questions tonight that have already been or will be answered, if I have asked questions tonight that have already been or will be answered by plans only newly revealed tonight at this hearing or later, it is because the process has been broken and urgently needs fixing. I ask the board to deny this application and require an application that answers all of these questions and a plan that fits both the site and the neighborhood, or at the very least, continue the public hearing until the public and the board have time to review and comment on a complete application. Project approval must be based on reviewed, documented plans, not verbal promises or unreviewed submissions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Georgia Bell, and I live at 29A Old Orchard Road. During the second site walk of 42 Ferry Road on December 12th, you were better able to view the freshwater pond that plays a direct role in flooding that already exists on my property and the surrounding abutters. You were also able to see how closely the driveway of the abutter at 29B Old Orchard Road runs along the edge of the pond. This driveway has a history of flooding from pond overflow. The previous owners of 29B Old Orchard Road, Jean and Bob Netto, lived at this property for 16 years. And during that time, their driveway was flooded over twice by the overflow from the pond. The flooding occurred without the added burden of a high-density housing development that severely slopes downward towards their property. Also during the site walk, remarks were made that the driveway at 29B prevents the natural outflow of this pond. After the site walk, Mr. Labonte, the developer, approached me and acknowledged my serious concerns about the flooding on my property. He also mentioned that he could place a culvert under the driveway that would run from the pond to the wetlands behind 29B's property in order to mitigate the flooding. He said that this would be easy to do. He would already have his trucks and equipment back there, and that this would take care of the flooding. But, he said, I can't put this on the site plans. This will cost me a lot more money. I will have to get approval from the landowner of Atlantic Heights, and it will be a process. This proposed mitigation plan from Mr. Labonte is in itself an acknowledgement of serious design flaws in his current site plans. And to me, the very need to propose mitigation is an admission that this development will create a serious flooding problem on my property. It is also deeply concerning that the applicant appears to be attempting side deals with neighbors and abutters in order to avoid complying with the standards and the ordinances of the City of Saco, and to avoid the full review and scrutiny of the Planning Board. Also, during the Conservation Commission meeting on December 17th, a commissioner clearly asked Craig from Acorn Engineering to state the current runoff rate of the site in its natural condition and the expected runoff rate after development. He responded clearly, I cannot answer this question. It's comparing apples and oranges. I find it interesting that he was able to come answer this question tonight, but not during the commission meeting. I want to be very clear. I recognize and appreciate the serious housing shortage facing our city and our state, and I am not opposed to high-density housing. But high-density developments must be built in appropriate locations on land that is truly suitable for that intensity of use, and that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, and that does not cause flooding and pollution and property damage to the abutting residents and neighbors. And it must follow a development approval process that is transparent to all. The bottom line is that this site cannot responsibly support high-density housing. The risks are known, they are documented, and they will be borne not on the developer, but by the people who already live here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to pause and make any comments or responses? I can continue. Okay, thank you. Wanted to give you the chance. Good evening, Planning Board and staff. Andrew Mondak, 29 Old Orchard Road. I want to state first off that I agree with the concerns of my neighbors and other community members, what they've expressed. I can confirm that the applicant approached me and my neighbor to offer to work with us on a solution to the flooding that he admits will be exacerbated by the plan, by the proposal. And I thank all of you for the questions that you are asking of the applicant and the concerning parts of their plan. Also, please understand that the few of us that you see here tonight represent a larger contingent of community members with concerns who are not able to attend in person because of the time and the format of this meeting. I'm here to request that discussion continue about the critical issues that remain unresolved, or that you vote no to approving this plan so that we can entertain a more conscientious proposal by the applicant. Firstly, all historical documentation that has been presented to date contradicts the alleged location of the spring in the survey plans that the applicant is submitting as proof, and the city planner is accepting in haste without proper consideration of the full context the data submitted by the community adds to the situation. it would be irresponsible of the city to breeze past a review and confirmation of that data that's being brought to the city by volunteers, that contradict city records, that they say otherwise. I ask that you think about this carefully. The applicant has a massive financial incentive to locate the spring anywhere except within proximity to their development site. The applicant's project timeline, development density, all of that depend on the spring not being within proximity. Is it reasonable to accept the applicant's statement without unbiased proof? I ask that of all of you. Also note that the previous surveys that they present, the intention of those surveys was not to locate the spring, so it's safe to assume that each subsequent plan only copies the previous mistake of the location. It does not act as multiple independent confirmations. It was placed by the surveyor while surveying the land for a different reason other than locating the spring, and subsequent ones just accept it and move on because it's not the purpose to locate the spring when they're surveying for development. Equally important, the abutting property owners at 32 Ferry Road, Mr. Rewinkle and Ms. Casano, do not stand to benefit from the spring being located on their property either. And yet, they have consistently advocated for the spring's protection. They have demonstrated genuine desire for stewardship of this resource. When they concluded that the spring is on their property, they did so because they believe it is to be true, and protecting it is the right thing to do for the city, even though it complicates their own property rights and their desire to build on their own property. The historical records all connect the city's spring location to 32 Ferry Road property and within danger of being harmed by the current plans. I'm not asking you to prevent development. I'm asking you to require honest investigation, require the applicant to commission an independent hydrological survey conducted by a qualified professional whose only purpose it is to locate the spring accurately. A professional study with field investigation and expert unbiased analysis. When the study confirms the spring is on 32 Ferry Road, as the historical evidence shows, the applicant can still build. They simply need to modify their plan to respect the necessary buffers required by Saco ordinances. They will need to protect this historic community resource just as every other property owner in Saco is required to do. Furthermore, I've already emailed and spoken previously before you about other concerns of city code violations, such as issues with the traffic and pedestrian safety. If this is not a safe place to walk, it's the responsibility of the developer to either make it safe, as they're increasing the danger by increasing vehicular presence and population. If code requirements are being waived at the word of the police chief, where are the waivers or compensations for not following these ordinances? The allowable lot coverage in the MDR zone this project exceeds. I haven't seen on their plans it was TBD, and so a quick, envelope sketch of just geometry shows that the MDR has, X number of allowable coverage. This plan exceeds it by, I think maybe a quarter of an acre. And then I saw in the plans, and I believe it was questioned here, does the applicant have financial capacity for this project? I haven't seen any further proof submitted that shows that they do have financial capacity in public record of the plans that were posted online. I patiently wait for you to address the many issues that I still haven't even addressed here tonight. They're just kind of waiting in the wings for the next item to be resolved so we can move on to it on the checklist. But I'm reserving my full commentary because of our limited time. I urge you to deny this application as designed so that the applicant and neighborhood can entertain a more reasonable plan for the parcel, or continue the public hearing until all of our concerns can be addressed with more than just lip service out, in front of people. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
My name is Avisha Mondak. I live on 29B, and I'm in a butter. My brother and I, along with many other pedestrians, use that sidewalks on Ferry Road to just travel about our day every single day. As I previously mentioned the last meeting before you, that I am concerned for myself, my brother, and other people that the increase of traffic brought by this production will make it more dangerous for us to walk every day and just exist on the sidewalk. The plans do not represent the current conditions in the area as it currently stands, and I do not believe that this development is the kind of high-density development that Saco would benefit from. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Archer, 185 Bradley Street. I will echo and ditto everything that you have just heard in regards to 42 Ferry Road. I did listen to the applicant's engineer and the applicant prior to the opening of the public hearing. There's a few points that I want to bring forth. Yes, the day after, at the very beginning of this, when I first said out of order on 10/27, I was speaking on another application, but at the very end I said, by the way, 42 Ferry Road is coming up, I need to leave, that's way too dense for the area. Then we had the next meeting, and at that meeting I heard some things and I immediately was piqued and triggered to do my own due diligence on this even further. I did go the day after Mr. Burgess went to Dow and Coolum because they are the resource. They are the source for Saco for 161, 62 years. And I know where to get those plans because I'm a retired real estate broker that needs to look at these documents. I found out that Mr. Burgess was there the day before. He did receive the 1988 one, which you have in your packet. We've given you all full disclosure and the applicant on some items. He did not receive the January of 1978, which tonight he says those were the stamped, those were, the surveyors. Yes, Dow and Coolin did do the January of 78, but that is a proposed conveyance on that plan that went up on your monitor. That was when the two brothers, the Cody brothers, and Mike Coolum, back in the 70s, walked the whole land. And that land that the Casanos Rewinkle owns, that is a portion that has been broken off over time. But back at that time, the Cody brothers, they went all the way back, and yes, I do believe in my research that is a permitted alteration. That is not at the head of the source. We do not know where the head of the source is. That's why further review, which you can require to make sure that everything is being done properly, and the city should require, because are we banking it on a third-party developer, or even when there was question 9 years prior? Now we go back to a 1960 deed that I found, and there is where you see the 250-foot radius on both of those plans that were put up on the board monitor. The 250 radius is in the 1960 deed. That's how we know it's there. That's how those surveyors know it. And those two surveyors, the proposed conveyance, and also the next one, which if you look at the square, that is Carl Goodwin, and I'm old enough to know Carl Goodwin and what he did for development in Saco. He still has his name on that property. And so we got the Goodwin families, we got the Cody families, we got the lineage, we have the Johnston family, the former Mayor Johnston, who appointed me to the HPC 13 years ago, knowing I was detailed. We have his son, who happens to be the council liaison, who knows a lot about the Cody family, that location, that a lot of historical knowledge is here in Saco still. We're still alive. What I'm saying is, do you know that it is there? Yes, I trust Mike Duke Coulomb. I trust that firm every which way. However, do we know what happened between 1870, which you received a picture of the house, which was this, Seal Rock Spring, 1870 to 1860? What went on? We know we had a fire at 32 Ferry Road, which was 368 Beach Street prior to that. We know that there was a fire, and that was the catalyst to take the 1919 start of the bottling company to 1947 to the fire to get it over to the Quonset hut, which is over on Old Orchard Road, which is all Cody and Stackpole and all these families. That's when they did a line, in my estimation, from the Quonset hut, because that was at 700 and some odd feet that goes straight back, versus is it on 32 Ferry Road, which is a 908 feet exactly. And that is in the articles that were sent to you 2.5 months ago. There's too many questions. The city doesn't have it. We have gone to the state, to the Rachel Carson. We have gone to UNE. We have gone to every place possible to find the documentation and the aerials that were presented. We have all that documentation. And I implore you to find out what these reviews are, bring in the appropriate agencies to find out what's going on. Now we have the aquifer. How big is that? Now we're going to go ahead and excavate. We're going to blast maybe. We're going to take clear cut. We're going to take all that vegetation out, and then impervious surfaces on top of it. Is that the right thing to do with so many unknowns? These are serious questions. One, the city should know what they have. What's a bottling company? That was a commercial bottling company. Where's the permits? That information is probably buried at the state level, at the archives, which we're looking for. But does Saco Water, does Howard have it? But they had to get permits through the city back in the 40s, back in the 30s, the 20s, the teens, and then the transfer over in the 50s. The gravel pit road, we already know down at Rendezvous Point that that gravel pit was pulled out several places along Ferry Road in order to make the Ferry Road back in 1954 to 1956. That's where they got that stuff. Now, why does the pond, which is a freshwater pond, I'm not going to repeat whatever all they said, but that's mapped out, 4.0 acres of wetlands and water and pond, and how big is that aquifer? Who's protecting the aquifer? How large is that? So even if you put it down to where they want to put it, that box, at the condos, how is all of this movement of earth what is it going to do underground? To finish up, I want to just mention the police. Thank you very much for a couple people that brought that up. It was one police person, the chief, totally respected. I believe in what he says. It was a safety issue. It was at the PRDC. But there was one. Follow the code. Traffic Safety Committee has not even been brought into it. We need to have more voices, more eyes looking on this whole situation. What about the bus stop? The condos that are there, they are going to have most likely children. What about the ones that don't have children, but they have bikes? Well, let's go over to the bike path. I knew it as a bike path until somehow it's a sidewalk. But they're not going to go wherever. They're going to go straight across at the top of that slope, at the top of that curve. My children, I lived at 85 Ferry Road for decades. My children, I got a bus stop at the end of my driveway because it was so serious. That is, Mario Andretti going down that straightaway for 50 years that I know of. So we didn't go to Pine Ridge, which was the bus stop. Still is. How's that going to happen? Those bikes are just going to go right out that driveway and go straight across. That's not safe. So TRC and the pedestrian committees should be requested by you to come in and give their reports. Brings me to the Conservation Commission. First time I ever went to one was December 17th. I'm like, wait a minute, where is what you both said, Mr. Brochu and Ms. Clark? This doesn't look like recommendations. It was filled out by staff that night and whatnot. The very next morning, email communications went out to one of the abutters saying, could we have the minute? Oh, that report's already done. And it was like, where is their recommendations with their names? I keep asking, trust but verify. Ask qualifying questions. And earlier tonight, I saw a whole different planning board with the qualifying questions and whatnot, and continuing an application completeness. I appreciate it from every one of you. It's like, that's the good governance that I personally have been advocating for. And then, I'm sorry, I can't even, I'm over. I'm so sorry. I'm going to end it there. But you have a lot to chew on, and I hope that you continue the public hearing and get this information before any decision, any findings of facts, or any conditions of approval are drawn up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Melissa Bell, and I am a resident of 29A Old Orchard Road. For the past several years, I have worked as a teacher for children with significant behavioral and emotional challenges in our community. I care deeply about this city and the people who live here. Yet, even while working full-time in a meaningful profession, I have struggled to find affordable housing. At times, owning a home of my own feels like a distant pipe dream. I share that because I want to be clear about something. Someone in my position could naturally be a strong proponent of development, and I am. I absolutely recognize the need for more housing, and I understand that higher density development can play the role that higher density development can play in addressing that need. I am not opposed to growth, I am not opposed to building, and I am not opposed to progress. But I firmly believe that development must be responsible, transparent, and carefully planned. It must not come at the expense of the health and safety of the land, the environment, or the surrounding homeowners who already live here. Over the course of this process, I have taken the time to review Saco's city codes and ordinances as they relate to this proposal. I have read the application materials, the reports, and the concerns submitted by neighbors and abutters. In doing so, I have found what appear to be numerous violations, inconsistencies, and significant pieces of missing information that are required for a project of this scale. These issues have been documented repeatedly and brought to the board's attention. They are not minor technicalities. They are not small oversights. They are serious deficiencies that carry real consequences. If this development moves forward as currently proposed, the impacts will be lasting and harmful to the surrounding residents. Increased flooding, destruction of wildlife habitat, and permanent alteration of historically significant land are just a few of the ramifications that we are facing. Of all these concerns, the one that weighs most heavily on me is the issue of flooding. As a resident of 29A, I have personally witnessed how severe the flooding already is on this property. During periods of heavy rain, the water rises so dramatically that it comes within just a few feet of our home. I have seen this happen on multiple occasions. I stood in my yard and worried whether the water would reach our foundation. I have felt the fear and uncertainty that comes with not knowing if your home is safe. Those experiences were unsettling, and they happened without a high-density housing development uphill from us. Now, we are being told that adding extensive impervious surfaces, significant tree removal, and concentrated stormwater runoff will somehow not make this problem worse. We are being asked to trust that retention ponds and engineered solutions will fully protect us. But the proposed measures are simply not sufficient. The reality is that the flooding will increase. Water follows gravity. This development sits higher than the surrounding homes. When heavy storms come, and they will, the existing residents will bear the burden. Our properties, our safety, and our peace of mind will be put at risk. That is not responsible development. I want to speak for a moment about something more personal. As a young person, I have always had strong faith in our justice system and in our local governing bodies. I was raised to believe that when people present clear evidence, follow the rules, and raise legitimate concerns, those concerns will be heard and fairly considered. It has been discouraging to watch so many well-documented issues receive so little meaningful scrutiny. Abutters and residents have submitted detailed letters with evidence, photographs, and firsthand accounts. Yet too often, it feels as though these concerns are minimized, dismissed, or treated as minor issues rather than serious warnings. I am not here to oppose development for the sake of opposing it. I am here because I believe this particular proposal, in its current form, is unsafe and irresponsible. So tonight, I am humbly asking the board to slow this process down and to truly examine the information that has been provided by residents and abutters. Please take the time to look closely at the inconsistencies, the missing data, and the clear violations of ordinance. Under honest and careful review, these problems are not subtle, they are blatant. I am holding on to the belief that what is true and evident will ultimately surface. I want to believe that when residents take the time to research, to gather facts, to speak respectfully, and to participate in this process in good faith, their voices will genuinely matter. I want to believe that careful analysis will prevail over convenience, and that protecting existing neighborhoods will matter just as much as creating new ones. The people who live here are not obstacles to be worked around. We are families, neighbors, and longtime members of this community who will live with the consequences of these decisions long after this project is approved or denied. Responsible development should never require residents to sacrifice their safety, their property, or their peace of mind. It should never ask homeowners to accept increased flooding as an unavoidable side effect of growth. And it should never move forward when there are still serious, unresolved questions about whether the land can truly support it. So I am asking you, sincerely and respectfully, to look beyond the promises and projections and to focus on the real, tangible impacts. Please weigh the evidence that has been presented. Please consider the lived experiences of the people who are already here. And please remember that once this land is altered and these homes are affected, there is no undo button. I am holding on to my belief that this board will choose to do what is careful, what is responsible, and what is right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this item while we have the public hearing still open? Board members? Thoughts, questions, concerns? You want to deliberate, ask questions of the applicant? Or would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I think it might be a good time to bring it back to board deliberation for a little while before we make a decision on the public hearing.
Sure.
Would you like?
If you, sure, just give me 90 seconds here. let me organize here for a moment. All right, I think I'm a little organized here. There's a sort of bullet points. So back to the board here for a moment. So a lot of comments and thoughts from neighbors and residents here. In no particular order, some of the items here to discuss, and we can go and decide that, well, to the board's will. Some traffic safety, flooding, spring location, wildlife, the watershed, wetlands, density, environmental impacts, financial capacity, impervious calculations, vegetation, buffer, pond, gravel pit, runoff calculations, post and pre, snow removal, question about blasting, parking. There's an elderly neighborhood note in there, and report from the Conservation Commission. So those are sort of some high-level points here, and a lot of discussion within those, I'm sure. But any other thoughts from board members that I may have not captured or mentioned specifically in that list, and in any order you'd like to tackle those or ask questions back to the applicant?
I guess, Matt, one thing that has been brought up is an existing conditions survey, including existing conditions on surrounding properties.
Sure. Any other thoughts from board members, or to begin a list, or thoughts or discussion, deliberation? Let's, if we could, Craig, there's a few here that I think we could answer pretty clearly here. I'm just going through and checking some of them off. So there's a note about snow removal and how that was going to be addressed and removing that off-site. So that could be a note that could be added to the plan to make sure that that's clarified. Yes.
I don't think that we want to completely remove the ability to use a snowplow, but they'll primarily use snow blowers to blow the snow off the sidewalks and into some of those areas that were defined by Adam as being kind of not really accessible because they were behind the sidewalk. But so the sidewalk areas, the area around the clubhouse, those will be done with a snow blower. The roadway will likely be done by a plow of some sort, which is why we still want to reserve the ability to have the snow storage areas on the site plans.
Sure, so we could, let's capture that and just clarify that. Blasting, if blasting is required, the city does have an ordinance and a standard to work with on that.
We had 4 test pits done on the site, and all of them went down to 8 feet. It was all clean sand for the most part. We don't expect any blasting.
So blasting is not expected. There was a note or a comment about financial capacity. That's in the packet we have this evening. I think that's clear. There was a question or a note about runoff calculations and a question regarding conversation on site. So you were able to, while not specifically answer those questions while on site with finite numbers, you were able to provide that this evening with us, and that'll be part of the record. And that was just a snapshot, if you will, of your report. Is that correct? That quantified those cubic.
Correct. The table was shown
Table
for
4, I
what's
believe.
required in the Saco ordinance for peak rates of runoff.
Sure. Any other board members' questions? Let's just for a moment on those items. Any concerns? Or continue from there? Could you maybe for a moment, Craig, speak about the parking? And there was, I think it was VHB had a comment in there and was asking about the parking calculation, and it seemed like it may have been for, or alluded to an elderly sort of calculation. Can you
Yes.
kind of clarify that?
So
There was
this
like-
is being considered it's not being considered an elderly housing project. It's going to be open to all ages. So we provided updated calculations, or the calculations to support that we had the parking in place to meet that requirement.
Okay. I think traffic safety, we had some discussion with the board regarding that. I think we have good direction for staff. We can, any need, would you like to address that further, board members? I think Charles, you have a thought?
Yeah, I just want to clarify the role of traffic safety. It's not in a similar fashion, especially as it's written in ordinance. And I look to folks who have been, on that committee, who are involved in it. They are not, in an advisory review in a similar manner to the planning board. I can look into kind of, if there's any connection between or any recommendations to make. But as it is in our process, the traffic safety committee typically does not, I don't think they have commented on active planning projects. They usually look at, how they're utilizing city resources in the city today. So it's not in a similar manner of Conservation Commission as like an advisory to the planning board or provide recommendations. That would all come through the staff members, DPW, police department, who work with the board, on behalf of the board too.
All right, thank you for that clarity. Thoughts from board members? Any questions, anything specific you want to move to? Jeff, sure.
I think it's very pertinent that we should be able to make a request of the Traffic Advisory Committee to give us feedback saying we realize there's a need for connectivity here. What would be the most desirable location for traffic flow in this area, regardless of this site or any other site, so that we have some guidance about, possibly requiring sidewalks. I think having a referral or an opinion is very valid. Why else do we have them as a board? I mean, they're going to just Band-Aid all the problems, one that we might create right here. So I think having some input and requesting a report would be very beneficial.
Yeah, I just want to say that and just to close the loop, the comments at PDRC were recommendation. We have not said at any point that, the recommendations of the board for a sidewalk. What I said earlier, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about this. We're going to chat with staff, DPW, police department. If they want to take it to traffic safety committee, we can do that. We can work with them and see if they're interested, if that's something that's possible. But we're not, the recommendation to the applicant at PDRC before it went to the planning board was to remove the sidewalks. That was a recommendation, they did it. Now it's before the planning board with public comment and staff, and we've already acknowledged that there was a need for that sidewalk. So I just want to make sure that and I look to Member Brochu just to confirm with you that you heard what we were saying, that it's not, we made the recommendation, we're against it. If we made the recommendation, it was removed from the plan, we heard you. And I just want to, I look to the chair to confirm that we're on the same page, because I can try to say it differently so you understand, but I just want to, I'm not hearing that you guys are understanding that we can't make that decision tonight. I mean, you guys can make that recommendation, but it seemed that we were in agreement for that we would take it back to staff, and then we would come back to the planning board to work with you on a recommendation for this project.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand, and I think, Jeff, please comment. My understanding, and I think the board's recommendation, is for staff to have the conversation with police chief and have discussion, that he knows that we have concern about it and that we're looking at it, and we're looking for some recommendations on how to safely control pedestrian activity or to encourage safe pedestrian movement in and about this area, and then holistically, how does that affect Ferry Road in the immediate area for this conversation, and then for another discussion, down the road. Is that how you understand it? Yeah. Jeff, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be very clear, though, that if we allow this division, these future pedestrians and cyclists are going to exist. You build it, they're going to be there. And I'm hearing that, we took the sidewalk out because it was high risk. That doesn't stop them. Now we just have an unregulated zone, basically. So that's why I'm asking, okay, if that's the case, what do we have this traffic review committee for? They should be weighing in on that conversation as well, so that they could say, hey, the planning board said, we recognize the police chief said we don't want to, it sounded like a crosswalk there, which I understand, because we had a site walk. It was very difficult. The sun elevation in the morning, it was kind of scary, right? But we need to know that people are going to be there, and where do we direct them? And what piece of that link can we put in to start building towards the most ideal, safest situation? And I'm not hearing that. I'd like to hear that opinion as to, hey, we need to direct them 1,000 feet to the east. Okay, that's where what can we do with this applicant to try to achieve that goal? That's just what I'm looking at, because our standard is saying the board shall require off-site sidewalk and connectivity where applicable, to the extent applicable. Well, we need to know where the safest spot for that to be is, because it's not cut and dry in our view. So I would like, to hear back from that.
Yeah, thank you. I share that understanding. I think that's the direction, that's what we're looking for from staff. And for a moment while we're there, we've sidetracked a little bit, but perhaps Councilor Johnson can speak with council and let them know that perhaps granting the power of Traffic Safety Committee to review plans similar to the Conservation Commission, that might be something to have further discussion on. Because Jeff has made a good point that it is conversation that we have quite often. So just a thought.
Mr. Chair, while we're on reports, could we request a much clearer report from the Conservation Commission? I mean, I would love to hear specifically, we talked about trees of significance. We talked about the applicant kind of mapping them. They went and they put them on their site. They were flagged during our site walks. We didn't hear anything from the Conservation Commission if they felt like they should be retained and what should be done. You know, they didn't have any resolution on the wetlands. They didn't have any resolution on the buffering. They talked about it, but we don't have their feedback. You know, how do we ask, Regina Leonard to give commenting on, the no disturbance zones and the buffering if we're not very clear on what needs to be preserved? And, the Normando report was pretty clear that everything had been delineated correctly. They didn't have many comments. And a lot of the stuff that's on the site is an invasive species of several different types. But they did note that there were 7, I think, very large oak trees that met our requirement of trees of significance. We just eliminate them? But, as a board member, I think their trees of significance, they were pretty massive on that site, and they're part of the character. They probably should be retained. I think that would be strengthened if we had a report from the Conservation Commission agreeing or saying, no, they're unhealthy, like they did on another parcel. They have a blight or something. That's their area of expertise. I think we should have a report that indicates their strong feelings.
Yeah, what are we supposed to do with the information they've provided us? We know what's been delineated. Now what?
I'll comment on that. And again, this is the same format that the Conservation Commission has used for previous things. And again, there's 2 comments here. One, there was a comment made that we received an email the day after about requesting conservation email that came on January 5th. And I responded back saying that I wanted the Conservation Commission chair to review the report before I shared it publicly so he could take a look at it, so Hoke could take a look at it. Matthew Hokinson, the chair. And then the minutes, I didn't want to share, I shared draft minutes as part of the Conservation Commission's agenda, but didn't want to share it with the planning board as they're not approved yet. But they are posted, the draft minutes are posted as part of the Conservation Commission agenda today. Those got posted Friday. And I think there's a larger conversation here. I was going to bring it up later in the evening about what the Conservation Commission expectations are for advisory report. I don't want to take away from the applicant's time right now on that. This is a fairly standard going back, 2-3 years with the Conservation Commission reports. This is the length. The chair felt that this captured their comments. If there's more substantial review required, again, that's a good conversation to have. I would love to give the Conservation Commission more direction and a staff liaison to that. I would like to be able to provide them with the guidance so that they can make those recommendations. But based on, ordinance, statute, previous reports, they do speak to some of those comments. They were looking for more information on significant tree removal, ensuring street trees and plantings are native species, asked about fencing for buffering. The conversation there, and I will let the applicant also, who was present at the Conservation Commission, speak to more of those conversations. But they were, I wouldn't say they were high level. I would say they were specific, and this report is representative of the conversation we had there. But I think maybe for a later conversation tonight, we can talk about what do you want from the Conservation Commission reports, because this is fairly standard for at least the last 3 months I've been doing these, but going back even further, it seems to be so.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I guess if I may, I would direct this report to Chapter 4-37F for the Conservation Commission. their authority and their tasks. Number 2, in addition to its responsibility for the stewardship of cities' natural resources, the Conservation Commission shall provide the Planning Board with technical assistance, operating as an advisory body to the board with the following functions. The Commission shall review and provide comments on site, comments to the Planning Board on development applications as to their potential impacts, either positive or negative, on the environment, on the natural environment, and to assist the Planning Board in preparation of periodic updating of the comprehensive plan. So, you know, they're supposed to be very technical in their guidance, and I don't feel like that report was. So that's kind of the section I would be referring to hopefully have a report that's a little bit more informative
I'll bring that to the Conservation Commission meeting next Wednesday, and or tomorrow night, and I encourage you to attend. That's at 5:30 in the first floor in City Hall.
So what we're getting at is looking for clarity on the report. Where board members may feel that it's not very clear. I think there's information in there. I want to be careful to not, I don't want it to make it look like the board or get into an unnecessary habit or an unintentional habit to ask the commission to go back because it's not what we wanted or we didn't think it was going to be what they wanted. Because I hear what Charles is saying here. There's information in there. It's not clear in black and white that they shall do this, they shall not do this, and I think that's what you were alluding to. There's a little bit more black and white in there, and I don't want to. I think just clarity. If they can provide additional clarity in the report, in lieu of a statement, I think this particular scenario, the statement is a little unclear, but I think that would help.
Right, we're looking for their recommendations. Not just their observations, but their recommendations.
Correct. A statement from them that would say, we recommend, and then I think that would obviously be most clear, and I think that verbiage there is missing, so I think that's where the gray area comes from. That's all. Okay. Craig, for a moment here, could you maybe speak briefly, holistically? I know you're a civil engineer, not a surveyor, but how surveyors go about surveying property here? We've had a lot of discussion on the spring location. So for just for a moment, holistically, surveyors and how they go about surveying and coming up with meets and bounds. Could you speak to that for a moment, knowing you're not a surveyor?
I know that there's a lot of research that goes into those plans before they release that as public record or put their stamp on it. When I talked to Down Coulomb, they were pretty sure that was the location. Whether or not that's the location shifted over the years before that, I don't know, but I know back in the 70s and 80s, that was the location of Seal Rock Spring as identified on the survey plan.
So as a civil engineer, when you receive a survey, I mean, that information, those meets and bounds that you're given, I mean, how does that?
They look back at all the records going back into the 1600s to be able to accurately show the property lines.
Okay. Board members, any questions on the location of the spring as presented by the applicant? Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I mean, I would typically concur that, you know, a stamp surveying plan is very factual. Now, the public has brought forth the notion and the possibility of an amendment or an alteration, so the wellhead may have moved, right? And that could very well be. The only factual, you know, real document we have is this Down Coulomb survey, because how accurate are some of the other dimensions from the City Hall at 1.2 miles? I mean, the post office, how accurately did they measure it back in those days? I guess to me, I'm more of a physical science guy. If that wellhead was going to the garage at 32 Ferry Road, why haven't we, if it why haven't we done some underground locating for the power source that was going to the wellhead? Why haven't we tried to track the existing pipeline, use some ground penetrating radar? There's multiple technologies that could bring us to a place that's much closer. And I am all for the thought and completely understand that this aquifer could have multiple heads, with spring points where they could draw water off from, but we haven't been provided that. And I guess how much do we try to put on the applicant to go and try to get access to somebody else's property to try to resolve the question or the doubt? And yes, it makes sense, right? Would the public be saying, hey, I think this is somewhere else on my property, because it's going to diminish the value of their property. They can't build on it. Now they've got a buffer on theirs, so there's some logic. And it was when vernal pools first came out. Everyone would say, I had a vernal pool, so the neighbor wouldn't develop next to them. But we have a certain system now of classifying those. Certain time of the year, they go out and do the studies and the surveys. So yes, I believe it could have changed, but I don't know how much do we put on the applicant and how much do we put on the city to go and try to find that it may have changed, right? I mean, I don't know. Some of these tests aren't all that expensive. If I'm assuming that they said that they had found bottles in the basement of the garage, right? Packaging bottles and crates. That pipe must be coming in there. The wiring must be coming in there. Put a toner on it and start tracing, see where it goes. Might take some exploratory digging, but that's going to take the landowner's permission and consent to do that. But if they're the ones that feel like it's much closer to this project site, then I think that burden kind of falls on them to prove that, hey, there was another wellhead much closer. So I'm kind of mixed. I mean, if there's proof of that, then I'm all for. There's a protection zone. That's our ordinance says that the Seal Rock Spring is identified as a resource protection, and we have to abide by that setback. Absolutely. I just don't know how far we go down this path of speculating where it might be. That's a little hard for me.
Those multiple wells are not shown on the survey plans either. So I would have thought that if there was a historic well that was on 32 Ferry Road, that would have likely been shown on these survey plans and identified.
Correct. But I'm also logical of that, the surveyors are only going to do this well housing, the dilapidated brick structure they're talking about. They're only going to map what was there at the time, right? So if that was what was there when Dow and Colum did their survey, and I apologize, in the 70s, 68 or 70, right? So if there was a previous wellhead, they would have no way of knowing. It might be buried. They're only going to document a structure that's actually there or something of significance, because I agree with you, Matt. I think that surveyors are held to a pretty high standard. They don't just arbitrarily put stuff on their plans and stamp it and say, yeah, it's close enough. We estimated where that swimming pool was. It's all good. They're usually held to a very high standard of being accurate for their drawings.
So the applicants provided 2 documents that show that well location. That well location is confirmed with the city's GIS and Resource Protection District, and a wellhead or a hand pump in a field doesn't mean that's a spring or that's just a hand pump. That, especially when it's not in any of the documented areas of in that documented zone of that spring. So I guess I'm satisfied as far as that location.
Well, I agree if it's a hand pump, but I mean, if the neighbors can present factual information that, hey, we have documented in, ground penetrating radar or toner that, the power supply ended 100 feet off of the property line, and that's where the wellhead was, then that brings a new character to me, especially if they were to excavate and find means of a structure of a wellhead, because that would have meant that the original bottling plant was pulling out of that first wellhead until it was amended or relocated. But like I said, we don't have any of that information, and I wouldn't expect Dow and Colum to be, finding subsurface material on their plans. So I guess I'm satisfied that the information that we have indicates where the well was being used at the time of the survey.
Jim?
I see that the same way. I mean, my experience with Dow and Coulomb is much as Ms. Archer pointed out. I mean, they've been the gold standard for surveying and Saco for many, many years, and probably most of the city of Saco has depended upon their expertise to determine, where property lines are. Now, with respect to the two maps that Craig came up with, the oldest one I thought was the most interesting because it showed where Dow and Coulomb thought the spring was located, but it also pointed out or did not show, I guess, much about the gravel pit. Craig, maybe you could bring that back up on the screen. But it gave me the impression that what the neighbors believe is a spring-fed pond, may simply be a gravel pit where, water has accumulated over time, and there may be more or less depending upon the season and the amount of rain. But, and I'm not in any way discounting the neighbors' concerns. I did the site walk twice. I know, I can certainly appreciate the worries that particularly 29A and B Old Orchard Road have. But it seems to me that the only, probably the best evidence we have, I think, is the Dow and Coulomb survey as to the location of the spring. Yeah, I mean, it shows the spring. That older map shows the spring. It actually shows, I guess, the gravel pit, which is pretty large, which is exactly where the pond is now. But we also saw next to the pond, when we went on our site walk, depressions which sort of showed part of the gravel pit that apparently wasn't as deep as the section that's the pond. So it seems to me if Dow and Coulomb had thought that the spring was located someplace other than where they located it there in the map, we would have seen some evidence of that. So I guess that all leads me to conclude that we need to rely on the Dow and Coulomb survey as to the correct location for the spring, insofar as it's been located on the city's maps and for the resource protection zone around it. I think we have to rely on Dow and Coulomb.
Thank you, Jim. Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I think it's interesting to point out, Jim, I think between those two surveys is, I think as it was testified tonight, that the gravel pit was created in 1954 to 56 for the construction of the ferry road. And I think that was in a gap in those plans, right? Which just also happens to be now where this pond is and where two homes were built in like a gravel pit depression.
Craig, can you additionally address how man-made features like that are addressed? I guess, could you address how they're addressed in a condition like that? Meaning, this was an old gravel pit, and now it's retained water, and it acts like a pond. How do those, as far as stormwater retention or maybe DEP, for example, how do they see those or any?
I've come across that a couple times now. One being Sanford High School. That was an old gravel pit, and where the tennis courts are at Sanford High School, that used to be an old. It looked like a natural pond. Upon research, we found out that it was part of a gravel pit pond, and Maine DEP and Army Corps no longer classified that as a regulated wetland, so we're able to fill that completely. Came across that on a site up in Hollowell for a solar facility. again, man-made wetlands as part of a gravel pit. And it took a bit going through the Army Corps process, but they considered those man-made wetlands, and they didn't regulate the direct impacts. For the solar project, they looked at the indirect impacts, but anyway, they weren't as regulated like a typical wetland or water feature, if you can prove that they're man-made. Because gravel pits these days are intended, a lot of them are internally drained. So in most gravel pits, you will find standing water because the DEP wants them to be internally drained.
Okay. Any other thoughts from board members? Any other items to adjust from our list here? There's some comments from our landscape peer reviewer regarding some of the trees, buffering vegetation, some suggestions there. Any comments from board members on those comments?
We do intend to add all the different shrubs within the perimeter landscape buffer. But one of the comments that was brought up was more detailed landscaping around all of the units. As part of this process, we prefer not to show that detailed landscaping for each unit. We'd like to provide some flexibility for the developer. But with the revised plan, what we're looking at would be adding all the different shrubs that would be planted as part of that buffer, in addition to all the trees that are shown on the landscape plans.
Okay. Jim?
Well, when you're done with that topic, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask Craig a couple questions about stormwater again.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Craig, it's pretty clear, neighbors are, I mean, this property at 42 Ferry Road is a little higher. It's like on a bit of a hill, to the extent there's hills there in this location. And so the neighbors are understandably concerned about stormwater runoff to their various properties. And I know you had indicated that the first site, that a stormwater retention near the Ferry Road is designed to drain water off the site, whatever stormwater comes off the site, into a culvert that would go along the Ferry Road. Is that right?
Yes.
And the other two sites, the locations for the detention ponds, where is all that water going to go after it leaves the detention ponds? It's going to go to the, I guess, to the north of the property? Is that where it's all going to go?
This is the under-drained soil filter that
Yep.
when it discharges out through the 4-inch pipe,
Yep.
it gets into that swale that we looked at on site,
Yep.
and it goes around into the pond. So we were able to provide the calculations. The stormwater management report as part of this project is very lengthy to demonstrate we're meeting all the city and state standards for water quality and peak rates of runoff leaving the property line. One of the main issues that I've identified in a previous meeting is that there was a driveway that was built here with no culvert. There is no place, once that pond fills up, there is no place for that to drain. If that driveway wasn't there, I feel like the natural conditions back before it was disturbed, this would have all drained into that swell that runs out behind Atlantic Heights. But that driveway represents a barrier. And we did not suggest putting a driveway culvert to help a problem that we're creating. Jason was being a good neighbor to offer a solution. So that was not done in desperation to try to solve something that we're creating. That driveway should have been built with one, if not two culverts.
Well, I don't know if it was, I mean, Jason may have said something. I think when I was on when I was on one of the site walks and I saw that driveway there, the first thing I thought of is, why wasn't there a culvert under the driveway to go and drain some of the water into the, but it's not there, and so that problem exists. but it looks like no matter where the water goes, the amount of water that will leave the site is significantly less, at least according to your calculations, than exists today.
Correct.
Okay.
Especially during the larger storm events. The 50-year storm event, you can see how the volume decreases, especially at point of interest number 3. I understand that's not directed toward the pond, but there's a large reduction there.
That's helpful. Thank you, Craig.
Chair, may I jump in and let you know that it is 9 p.m., so according to your standard operating procedures, you guys should vote whether or not you guys would like to continue and set a time you would like to end.
Thank you for the reminder. Board members, Joyce, did you have a separate comment? Is that what you were gonna?
It was about stormwater too,
Okay.
so.
Well, don't lose that. So as Planner Tellman has reminded us, if the board would like, could we get a motion to continue, and again, with a fixed time that the board would like? Motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move that we continue past our 9 o'clock cutoff with a hard stop of 9:45.
I'll second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on the motion to continue our meeting beyond our 9 p.m. Cutoff to 9:45? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to continue our deliberation this evening to 9:45. So Jim, did you complete your thought there for stormwater for a moment, and then Joyce, you had a question or thought?
I'm all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, just following up on the stormwater and runoff, one of the members of the public had commented on concerns about concentrated runoff. Can you explain a little bit about, I think what we need is an explanation of how the under-drain soil filters work and what is actually going on to neighboring properties. Is it water that contains pollutants from roofs and driveways and roadways? Is it somehow treated in such a way that what's leaving the property is clean?
Yeah. So the under-drain soil filter that's at that location, that is a state-approved best management practice for treating stormwater runoff. So the runoff that leaves this under-drain soil filter is treated to meet state standards. This under-drain soil filter is one of the most common best management practices you likely see on a lot of projects. Contractors are familiar with how to build them. They're very common. It relies on filtration to treat the runoff. So there's an 18-inch soil filter media that's under this elevation. So under elevation 76, going to a depth of 74.5, there's an 18-inch, it's a blended mixture that's defined by Maine DEP. And as the runoff filters through that media, the pollutants stick to the material. That's how the runoff is treated. And this is a proven effective BMP in the state of Maine. The comment was regard to sheet runoff. So currently, a lot of that runoff leaving this area of the site flows in this direction. But because we have to treat it, we have to get it to a best management practice to do so. So we're diverting a lot of that runoff to here. Ultimately, all that runoff that sheets in this direction, in the northwest direction, ultimately makes its way into that swale that we looked at on site. So we're just bringing all the water to the under-drain soil filter, treating it before we discharge it back to off-site. And we're discharging it generally at the location where it concentrates currently today. And that's the goal of Maine DEP BMP manual is to put runoff back into a defined channel. And in this area, this is where the water tends to concentrate. So we're putting it back into that channel.
Maybe part of it's an unfortunate use of terminology that the water is concentrating it, and people are thinking about concentrated pollutants.
Yeah,
And,
so
and we're
it's
talking about two different things here.
So the runoff is being treated. This project does have to meet Maine DEP requirements for the amount of impervious area being created, which is 1.6 acres. So having more than 1 acre gets it into that state standard. But City of Saco has also a lower threshold for water quality, 10,000 square feet. So with this project, we are treating the runoff to meet DEP standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Craig, in that same location, you explained it very well, I think, and then the way you said something kind of sparked this question. But you alluded to, and correct me if I'm wrong, the water from this property, as it sits today, it sheets off onto the adjacent property, and the intent is that's still going to remain after the development here, and then that sheet flow goes towards that northwest, and then hits that natural sort of depression and swale in there, and then you're saying it's coming back to your treatment area. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. Well, so the swale starts over on this side of the site, which is the southern end. So you can see that swale. It's picking up the runoff in a pipe system, bringing it over here where it then goes into another pipe, which then makes its way over to the underdrain soil filter at this location where it's detained, treated, and slowly released back to where it ultimately goes today.
Okay. I'm going to ask another question. Is there any surface water from the adjacent property in the northwest that enters this site that goes into that treatment area from that back corner? It's hard to tell from, looks like there's a grade 74 or 73 in that corner. Does that make sense what I'm
Generally,
asking?
no. There
Okay.
might be a little bit. But generally, this is designed to focus on the site's runoff.
Sure. And then from our site visit, that natural swale we saw back there, that's going away from the property. That's not coming towards the property.
Correct.
Correct.
This
That
is
area
going
right
west and then ultimately wraps around into that man-made pond.
there. Okay. That's what I wanted clarity on. All right. Thank you.
And then what the neighbors are seeing during those 50, 100-year rainfall events, that pond, the water level likely reaches, and it doesn't have an area to overflow.
Sure. Jeff?
But one of the key points in these systems, and I was very skeptical when I first started doing this, is, Craig, is that during that 50-year storm, the rate of discharge from this lot, according to your table, is going to be less than what currently is. So the rate at which that pond is going to fill is going to be slower because it's going to be time released because of your infiltration measures, right?
Correct.
One more, maybe a little bit difficult question. Could you, I changed my mind. Any other thoughts from board members? Talked about the wetlands. Could you, for a moment, Craig, touch upon the density again for a moment? There was a question about density and impervious.
Sure. So the net residential density calcs demonstrate that the site supports 32 total units. 25 are proposed. The medium density residential district has a lot coverage, a maximum lot coverage of 35%. Lot coverage is defined by the area for a building structure. So the actual lot coverage assuming just the building structures alone, is around 17%. So we're well below that. The total impervious area on the site is 43%.
Proposed.
Proposed. But Saco doesn't have a maximum impervious coverage, but I want to note that that's only a little bit above the maximum lot coverage ratio of 35. So the entire site as a whole, looking at all the impervious, not just building, is 43%. But Saco allows up to 35% for just building, and that doesn't count all the drive aisles and parking areas.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, and I just want to echo that, and also just on the zoning piece, there was a public comment on, appropriate density for the area. This lot being 3.65, 3.7 acres can have up to 32 units on the lot based on the allowed density, and also 81 units if it's affordable housing development. So just to clarify on what the existing density allows in the zoning today.
And that was for affordable, you said 82?
81. So it's 2.5 times the base.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members that I may have missed here? Any remaining questions for the applicant? Direction to provide clarity on items beyond what we've spoke about this evening?
Well,
Jeff?
For me, kind of summarizing my thoughts, it's getting late now. The buffering is an issue in my view. We hear a lot of things about compatibility. We're being tasked with trying to incentivize and promote this infill density where the utilities exist. This application's doing that, but we're also looking at 25 units versus 81 if it was affordable housing, right? That's a huge difference. And to say it doesn't fit with the neighborhood, Seal Rock Springs is a massive facility that's right next door. And then I think just up the road a little ways, there's Pembroke Apartments whichever way you're looking at it, before you get to the railroad tracks heading back into town. And immediately after that, there's another condominium association by the railroad. So this type of density is creeping out there. It's meeting the objectives of what our comprehensive plan's asking for. But at the same time, trying to respect neighbors. Seal Rock Springs has a pretty substantial buffer that we could see the buildings, but there's still vegetation. This one doesn't really have a lot. And that's a little bit of a concern. So if we could do something with some buffering to offer the protection of the neighbors. We hear so many things about the wildlife, the deer wintering areas. And, if I recall, a deer wintering area in the state of Maine, I think is over 2.5 acres of a very specific vegetative forest. And this is a 3.7 acre lot. It's, so it's like there's a lot of distractions here, and I get it. We all like to have the fox and the deer and animals in our yard. I mean, and the big one is the stormwater runoff, right? And like I said, having done this a lot, watched a lot of these developments, it's amazing how many come back after they put these BMPs in place, that they're slowing and controlling some of the erratic flow that naturally occurs with undeveloped land. So, I don't know, I guess I think some of the concerns we're here, if we could have some very factual proof that Seal Rock Springs existed somewhere else and we're not interfering with that buffer is a concern. But other than that, what can we do to try to soften some of the buffering from the impact of this site? Because in many ways it does fit a lot of the objectives that have been put before us in the comprehensive plan. But pedestrian safety, is important, and that's why I was hoping to be able to tie in those extra reports, like we talked about earlier tonight, because I think that's important for us to make a decision. So I don't know if I'm ready to necessarily move on this tonight until we get more of that information, but that's kind of my outstanding thoughts, is kind of how do we soften the impact. The applicant's done several of these projects before, and you know, they do kind of look clear-cut, you know, they're pretty significant, and I understand his point of view when they say, oh, we don't want to have hazard trees that are left around, but it can be very drastic when there are no natural trees left after the project is completed, and they're all replants. So I'm just wondering, what can we do to maybe save some or soften the impact of the buffer? Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? Jim?
I guess notwithstanding everything I said earlier about the traffic and the pedestrian, I'm not as concerned about the traffic itself. I mean, I think that the lines of sight are, the traffic reviewer was pretty clear that lines of sight are actually pretty good in that location. Yes, Ferry Road, in Old Orchard Road, it's a high sort of risk location, and it has been for many years. It was when I lived there. I would be very interested to see if the police chief had any thoughts about pedestrian safety, bicyclists, whatever. You know, people leaving this development to, if they wanted to get on the sidewalk across the street, what would be the best way to do that? And to the extent that it's, we think it's appropriate for this applicant to go and contribute to that, I think that makes sense. Again, having lived on that road just probably 1,000 feet north for 12 years, I mean, I didn't find it that difficult. My kids cross the road. I cross the road all the time to go to the Laurel Hill Cemetery. It was a beautiful place to go. And I didn't, you know, you got to watch the traffic, but it wasn't awful crossing. That said, there's a lot more units there. I would just like some thoughts from the police chief or traffic safety or someone as to if there's something that could be done there that might make it a little less dangerous, that's all.
Thank you, Jim. Joyce?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it wasn't that long ago someone was killed crossing the road right across from 117 Ferry Road. It's something needs to be done for pedestrian safety, and I'm not saying it's this applicant's responsibility, but if there's something that would help contribute to that, now's the time to talk about it. And if that means, you know, maybe it's just a sidewalk to Harbor Drive, it's a start. I mean, if we get some information about traffic, pedestrian safety, more detailed recommendations from the Conservation Commission. I mean, if we're coming back here again anyway, certainly if the neighbors find some more information about the location of the spring, I'd certainly be interested to hear it. It's hard not to rely on Dow & Coulomb, who I agree has a great reputation in the area. It's a professional survey as opposed to a newspaper article. But it seems like there's some opportunity to if there's more information to be found, to bring that forward.
Thank you, Joyce. Catherine?
I wanted to echo Joyce and Jeff about sort of long-range planning over there for if this isn't the appropriate place for a crosswalk, which I understand why they're saying it's not, is there going to be one sort of close to that at some point that we can start building out parts of sidewalks to get closer there? Jeff brought it up earlier, sort of like linking, you know, if each applicant takes part of it, till we eventually have an idea of where there is going to be a crosswalk, maybe that's something that could be part of a discussion with traffic and safety. That's it.
Thank you. So, I agree. I think strengthening some of the buffers. You mentioned addressing some comments from the landscape peer reviewer. We've mentioned it. We won't continue to mention it, Charles, but he has direction to get us more thoughtful and deliberate input from the police department. Conservation Commission, we spoke about that. I think the applicant, I think they have good direction from us. So from there, Charles, if the board would like to continue, is there another date that we could see the applicant to continue this discussion with their amendments?
Okay, so looking at the February 3rd meeting, which I think would be too soon, we have 5 items now scheduled because we have to table 2 tonight, and a workshop item, so it's 6 total items. On February 17th, we have 2 workshops and 4 items with the addition of the 986 Portland Road we just rescheduled, and we already have 1 item on for March 3rd as well. So they'll give you that information. I think it looks like our limit for reaching our thing is on average about 3 items per meeting. So it looks like we're tabling to, just based on what we've been doing, we're looking at going to April. I have some more thoughts about earlier start times for the planning board coming later. But realistically, we could squeeze this in on the 17th and push some other stuff off to later on. Those haven't been fully scheduled, but those applications were received last week and scheduled. So I'll leave it up to you. If you guys want to, try to do 6 items on February 3rd, 7 items on February 17th. But realistically, it's looking like March 3rd is the next agenda that clearly has time on it. But if things get tabled, then everything gets pushed down.
Thank you. Of our potential agenda items for the coming meetings, do any of those items as new business need to be on those agendas?
Yes.
To meet our 30-day requirement?
Yep.
Okay. Are there items that are on the agenda that maybe could move that have flexibility in that 30-day requirement?
Some have already been scheduled since December 4th and December 16th as well, or December 2nd, December 16th. So there is some wiggle room, but I think in fairness of other applicants, I'd be pushing it. So if you would like to see this sooner, February 17th would be the best, and we can move some things, and I can work with I can let those applicants know. Or we can leave them on the agenda and see if you get through 5 to 6 items in a night. I'll defer to the board for that.
Sure, thank you. Craig, do you think you could respond to these items that we discussed this evening for a February 3rd meeting or a February 17th? Is there, I know you want to continue, but I want to make sure that there's adequate time for you for first question, and then I'll second question.
February 3rd, I think we could hit. I would just look at Charles to see when that submission deadline would be.
We're past that. Well, technically it would be the 28th, but if you wanted staff to review it, if it was scheduled for February 3rd, we would get the submittal and we wouldn't have staff comments and we would just be back again. So if we want a full submittal with staff comments and response to help guide the board, help ground some of the public comment, February 17th or March 3rd would be best.
Okay. That, I think, is what the board is going to support, and Catherine, hold on one moment. I guess I'm going to ask the board if we would like to begin reviewing findings of fact, or if the board's not, a couple nods, but that's going to be my next question. And if the board would like staff to provide those draft findings to begin review, that would be a 17th meeting as well, for sure, then, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be correct?
Yep.
Questions, Catherine?
We are looking for information from Conservation Commission and traffic, is that going to give them enough time to get the paperwork we need?
So conservation meets tomorrow evening, correct?
Yes.
So
But
that's,
this is not on their agenda, I can bring it to them, but their next meeting would be February 25th. Afterwards, I don't know if they would have enough time to, they wouldn't have enough time to review the material, it's not on their agenda. So it would have to be an initial conversation about the contents and extent of their report, and then to have whatever is envisioned from the planning board. That would be February 25th. And then to issue a report a longer report and put it into a format, even now we're looking at past March 3rd, because that would be a turnaround for Friday, February 27th for that packet for the March 3rd meeting. So these are kind of the requests, and I can't speak for traffic safety right now. We can definitely get you staff comments based on the traffic peer reviewer suggestions, the conversation tonight for the 17th. But for a comprehensive report with recommendations from the Conservation Commission that they haven't done before, March 3rd, even March 17th is what I'm kind of looking at based on what the planning board is requiring. But March 3rd, February 17th is probably the most fair for the applicant.
all right, thank you. Thoughts from board members, Jim?
Well, I don't think we're asking for the Conservation Commission to come up with a whole new report. All we're looking for is a couple sentences or maybe a paragraph to just summarize any recommendations that they may have. I mean, I actually read that report that they provided, and I recognized it was a little vague, but I thought it was vague because there wasn't anything in particular that they were recommending that we focus on as a planning board. That's how I took their report. So if all they need to do is just reevaluate their report and tell us if there's anything specific that they want us to do with respect to this site, hopefully they could do that at tomorrow night's meeting. I mean, I'm not trying to press them, but if we're looking for a couple sentences,
We can at
hopefully
least,
they could do that.
yeah, we can at least have staff address our thoughts and concerns with the commission, and they can provide thoughts back to staff, I guess. I agree with you.
And so with regard to traffic, I don't know how frequently the Traffic Safety Committee meets, but I don't know that we necessarily need that committee to meet and issue a report. If the staff, as Charles has indicated, can provide us some guidance on traffic pedestrian safety, I'd be satisfied with that. And I would hope that we could, for that February 17th meeting, also have some draft findings of fact and conditions of approval for us to at least start talking about.
Thank you, Jim. Thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, I would move that we continue the review of this application to March 3rd to allow city staff to accumulate on the requested information of the board.
Is that to continue the public hearing as well?
Yes, I'm sorry. I move that we continue review of this application and the public hearing to March 3rd.
March 3rd?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm just nervous what they've been talking about. If Charles is correct, the Conservation Commission meets tomorrow, and at least give them a chance to have a heads up. I mean, I just don't want to be spinning our wheels on the same stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of very good researched information. They deserve the feedback. We deserve to try to be able to move forward as well. So,
All right, I'll second that.
Any additional discussion? So motion made and seconded to continue the public hearing and application review to March 3rd. Within that motion, there was not, you didn't mention anything about asking staff if they could provide any draft findings of fact or conditions of approval to review. Is that something the board would like to add to that or look at that meeting?
I felt like it would be more appropriate at that meeting to, depending which way we go with feedback for sidewalks and tree growth, I just think that there's too much preliminary stuff to do the draft. So I would just rather continue the public hearing.
Any other thoughts from board members? I think my thought is if we're looking at the 3rd, then I think that would be adequate time for staff to begin to draft that document so we can start to look at that list and start discussing and having perhaps some deliberation on at that point, any remaining items that are of concern of the board.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll amend my motion to continue the public hearing and application review to March 3rd and to direct staff to formulate draft findings of facts and conditions of approval, as well as provide feedback from the requested bodies of the Conservation Commission, Police Chief, and Traffic Safety.
I'll amend my second.
Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor of continuing application review and public hearing to March 3rd and requesting a staff draft findings of fact and condition of approval, along with receiving comments from Conservation Commission as appropriate and Traffic Safety Committee. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, continuing along here, it's 9:32 p.m. We're continuing, given our motion earlier, to end at 9:45 this evening. Our next item on the agenda this evening is item 6C. This is 184 Simpson Road, map 121, lot 06. And this is a continued public hearing review for ecology education. Charles, any additional items on this before we begin?
Yeah, I just have a clarification. I know that you're allowed to extend the close of the meeting. I still don't think your public hearing guidelines allow you to take up new items, new business. I know this was continued. I just want to make sure that this is something you guys have been doing. My reading is that these items are tabled to the next meeting once you make that vote, so you finish the item and you don't take up any other business. Just curious if that's what you guys have done in the past. This is just going off your public hearing guidelines.
Thank you. That is a fair question. Let me see if I can answer that quickly. I have to admit, I'm not sure if we've come across the scenario where we've extended and then still had time.
For what it's worth, if I can, sorry.
I think if we, sorry, hold on, one moment. I guess I think where we have a few minutes, thoughts from boards, I guess we can, where we're at, we have a few minutes. I think I'd look to the board if they'd like to open this item, hear briefly from the applicant, and then table to another meeting.
That's what I was going to address. I'd prefer not to do that, just for the disjointedness. That feels like if we're going to have a session, we're going to have to come back. I think the remarks and the context of the remarks would be better as a block rather than 5 minutes now and then.
Sure.
We'll come back a month from now.
That's fair. I appreciate the input.
Yep, thank you.
So with that, Charles. February 3rd?
Yes. I've already added 184 Simpson and 352 North Street, which has already been requested to be tabled anyway, and based off the last meeting as well. Those have added, so we're just going to have a busy February 3rd. It's the next meeting in your rules, so there's not much flexibility there.
Okay, I was just going to say, next meeting, and then we can work on that agenda when you finalize it.
If I can add a question to that.
Sure.
Will there be a chance to supplement the written materials from where they rest right now? I know that some comments came in late, sort of post-submission that may need response.
Yes, I believe, Charles, you said the 28th is technically the deadline for the February 3rd meeting?
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
February 28th.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I believe we have to table this item to the next meeting.
Correct.
But where the applicant for 352 North Street requested table, we should have the liberty to move them. They requested it, we're going to move them in, so we don't have to try to cram them on February 3rd. Should we move them out to,
So just
yes,
for-
352 North Street?
The context on 350 North Street was at not our last meeting, but the meeting on January 6th. We said that, we'll bring them back to the 20th because it was a pretty quick thing. If we had legal review, we didn't have legal review, so that was what you guys had motioned, and we're following that. We can finagle that, but I think it might be fine. So I'm fine with that.
You're fine with
Moving it to the 17th.
Yeah, based on this evening, this application gets tabled to the next meeting. Let's tackle one at a time.
Mr. Chair, with that, I would move that we're required to table 184 Simpson Road, the Ecology School, to our February 3rd meeting.
I'll second.
All right, thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
And that was January 28th for supplementing? Thank you. Thank you very much.
So our next item on our agenda, 6D, Charles, this is 352 North Street, and they've requested to be tabled to, they've just requested to be tabled for.
It's technically not their request, it's staff and the planning board, and going off the planning board's January 6th, so it's hard for me to say it's their request when it came from the planning board scheduling them on the 20th and staff looking for legal review, and then the applicant's not in the room to speak for themselves.
Okay.
So I think it would be tough to move them further. That being said, that applicant does have items on that agenda anyway, but still, we have to treat each individual application fairly. And we are, by moving this, we do have to schedule some meetings for the 17th or the 3rd for subdivision applications, just because of our application or the timeline within 30 days of receipt of application. And we have a lot of projects right now, and we don't have that much flexibility.
Sure. So as it stands right now, we have, the 3rd, February, 17th of February, and then we're into March 3rd for the moment. So thoughts from board members, I guess.
Well,
I'd like to address this item first before we move into board comments and department updates and general correspondences. I have some topics there.
I mean, there was I guess the 352 North Street, if it had just been where we left it, would make sense to just try to get it on the next available agenda. However, there was public comment from the owner. There was a submission in there about concerns about the pump station and the increased use of the neighbor, and it's looking like it's going to be more of an involved kind of feedback from Water Recovery Resources and their condo agreement, right? Because that was what I think what we had talked about was one neighbor is pumping into their pump station, and now we're creating a condominium association, and, you know, they're requesting that that neighbor be removed from the pump station. It's getting to be pretty involved, so I think where they requested it, and we can put them out further. I think it would put them out to the March 3rd and review it then.
So, Charles, if the board were to move that item to February 3rd,
March 3rd.
well, for a moment, February 3rd, is there comments that you're looking for from either the applicant or from staff members?
It's just from the city's legal review.
So and that deadline would be the 28th. It's a week from tomorrow, correct?
That deadline is 3 p.m., 5 p.m. Tuesday, because that's not an applicant submission. The applicant submissions are due at 5 p.m., but the after-the-fact packet, we stopped doing the after-the-fact really at 4 p.m. on the day of the planning board meeting right now. So I would take that piece and hand it to you guys at the beginning of the meeting to review, the legal review of it. And then you guys could make that decision in the receiving the after-the-fact packet to table it further. Otherwise, it'll be posted in your packet. But I've waited for this review for some time, and we don't have it yet. And that's the only outstanding piece.
So I guess my suggestion would be to table this item to February 3rd, pending final comments from the city attorney. And then we address it from there, I guess, if that's the piece. I know we have a tight agenda, and I guess for the moment, I guess that would be my suggestion. And then if we need to continue it from there, we want to say we keep pushing, but
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we continue the 352 North Street application to February 3rd.
I will second that.
Any additional discussion on the motion to table 352 North Street to February 3rd? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, our next item, 7, general correspondences, briefly here. Anything beyond what we've received this evening, Charles?
No, just a reminder that we do have a site walk tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I will not be present, but 2 of the assistant city planners will be there, Madison and Lauren. What was the other thing? Oh, and just a reminder to sign the plans on your way out.
Thank you. And that site plan, or that site walk, we're going to meet at Bayberry, Boothby Lane.
Wildberry.
That was close.
Bayberry is my street. That's crazy.
But it's off of Boothby. It's off Boothby Lane. We're going to park on Boothby Lane.
So it's not on the project is for 83 Jenkins Road, but coming from that exit 36, it's just go past the next road, take a right onto Boothby, and then take a right onto Wildberry.
Correct. Yeah.
And we are allowed to park on private ways, so it's fine.
Okay.
Wait, are we parking on Boothby or Wild?
Boothby.
Okay, that's what I have in my notes. Thank you.
All right, planning department updates and discussion. I think we've mentioned our schedule coming up.
Yes. We received 6 applications in the last week, 3 of them sketch plans, 3 of them preliminary, 2 of them preliminary subdivisions, 1 of them final subdivision. We have, 11 to 12 other active projects under review. And I'm just looking at, numbers, meetings, we're looking at 5 to 6 meetings minimum for an approval for preliminary, and that's only for like a preliminary site plan. It'd be nice to get that done to 3 to 4, but I know we like our process. We're running into a bottleneck, quite frankly, and I curious if the board would be open to starting some meetings like the February 17th at 5 p.m. I know that's been done in the past. We have 2 workshop sketch plans for that day. It's the same applicant. Would like to schedule those together. Just curious if that's something we'd be interested in, and to really, if we have to do that going through March as well, just to kind of lessen our load and avoid some of these tabling. I think it's good that we do deliberate and take our time and careful with the attention, but we are, we're building up slowly. So the next 2 agendas right now have 6 items each.
Yeah, thank you, Charles, and I think that's a fair suggestion. So that, or we look to schedule, a few special meetings. So I guess that's from board's input. Would the board like to perhaps do a special meeting every, when needed, or try to begin early at a few of the upcoming meetings here? Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I'd be a solid no on starting early. Historically, it hasn't benefited us at all. I would be much more conducive to have an additional special meeting or 2 to get through the bottleneck.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? Jeff, Jim would prefer a special meeting. Joyce?
Yeah, I think a special meeting is more efficient because these are already pretty long evenings, and going from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock is, I'm not sure we're always at our best after a few hours.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard for me to get here for 6 o'clock sometimes.
That's the other thing is yeah, you working out of town especially.
I know I'm difficult.
We want to keep you as chair though, Matt, so don't get any ideas.
So Charles, do we have an opportunity to do special meetings? I think unfortunately, just looking at the calendar, maybe the 10th of February wouldn't be enough time, but perhaps the 24th, is that? I'm just going with a Tuesday, but.
I think we want to keep the Tuesday time, Tuesday at 6 p.m. The 10th would be nice, but I think it makes realistically not much difference if it's the 10th or the 24th. And with the 24th, we can kind of plan ahead a little bit. So I would lean towards the 24th, just to give us a little bit of time.
I agree, and I think at this moment, I don't think we have to define an agenda for that evening, but I think if the board could support a February 24th special meeting, I think that would help. I think that would help the application. I want to say backlog, just log, the application log. So I see some head nods here. Okay, let's do that, Charles, and we'll schedule a special February 24th meeting with an agenda to be determined. Any other planning department updates?
Nope.
I think there's communication from Mayor McPhail. I believe that she may have a member for the board for us, and I think that might come before the council soon. I think that's as much as I know. All right, final item here. Any planning board comments? Catherine?
I have a question about the FOIA training Zoom on the 3rd of March. Is the one we did in the fall, cover us for the year, or do we need an additional one?
No, that'll cover you.
Okay.
So if you did the FOIA training in the fall, you're good for calendar year. And this is just for, those who will try to get the new planning board member to do that. And if anyone else hasn't done it or missed that training, let us know. We can sign you up for it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right, appreciate everyone staying late this evening. Really greatly appreciated. We will adjourn at 9:50 p.m. Thank you, everyone.